I'm happy to have here as host Michael Faber, former State Museum Director of the Landschaftsverband Rhineland, an open-air museum Kommern, where he led one of Germany's more significant open-air museums until his retirement. Since 2022, he has served as president of ICOM, with a career dedicated to cultural heritage preservation, museum leadership, and public engagement. He continues to share his expertise in advisor and speaker in the fields of museology and heritage management. I'm very happy to have him here, and I thank very much him for the Avicom involvement in our project and support our project with enthusiasm. Michael is speaking about valuability and usability of externally produced ethnographic documentary films in the affected societies and their cultural institutions. Thanks.
Thank you so much, it's a little bit of a challenge to start with a long speech after the lunch, and I try to shorten it a little bit. Foreseen are 1 hour, and please forgive me if it will be a little bit a long presentation. And please forgive me too that I prefer to see it, because we will see some films, and so I can better control the film presentation via the monitor. First of all, dear colleagues, as president of Avicom, that's the International Committee for Audiovisual, New Technologies and Social Media, I would like to welcome you once again to this very important conference. We have discussed in the last 2 days the question of how to deal with cultural and natural artifacts in museums and other collections that have been looted or stolen, appropriated by force, acquired as trophies, purchased under the economic conditions of poverty and hardship or in other illegal ways. We know of the countless cultural artifacts that have been brought into private and public collections in this way since the voyages of discovery and in the Sorry. We know of the countless artifacts that have been brought into different collections in this way since not only the time of the 19th century and the 20th century, but also since the voyage of discovery and of course in the course of colonization since the 16th century, especially in the metropolises of London, Paris, Berlin, and Brussels, and of the goods that continued to enter such collections illegally well into the 20th century during the period of continued colonialism, including from Africa. The spectrum extends far beyond works of art and ethnographic objects and also includes natural resources, natural history, and anthropological objects such as skulls, entire skeletons, fossils. We are all too familiar with examples of museums in Europe whose collections are based to a significant extent on acquisitions that are unlawful, at least according to current legal opinion, or at least whose provenance has not been clarified. The African Museum in Tervuren, for example, we heard from them, houses the largest such collections in Belgium. It's more than, as I know, 180,000 cultural, historical, and natural history objects, primarily from the former Belgian colony, what is now the Democratic Republic of Congo. As in summer 2021, the Belgian government approved the transfer of ownership of more than 800 demonstrably loaded cultural artifacts to the Democratic Republic of Congo. A further 35,000 objects whose provenance has not yet been clarified lost their status as public property and can therefore be restituted. In France, the Musée du Quai Branly has one of the largest colonial collections, including from Africa. In 2020, the French National Assembly decided to repatriate 25 cultural artifacts that had been stolen by French troops in the course of the destruction of the Palace of Abomey in 1892, in response to demands from the government of Benin for their return. In the Netherlands, the Wereldmuseum Rotterdam and its dependencies in Amsterdam, Leiden, and Bergen-Daal are home to around 160,000 objects of colonial origin. In January 2021, the Dutch government approved and centralized, standardized procedure for the repatriation of objects of colonial origin. It announced that all objects in the national collections that were illegally removed from the colonies would be returned to the countries of origin. African countries in which the Netherlands had colonial territories or military bases, mostly before 1800, should also benefit from this. Dear colleagues, there are many more examples in terms of holdings of cultural assets that were acquired illegally from today's perspective, but also of efforts to restitute, for example, to return them to a person or community of origin, such as an ethnic group, or to repatriate them to a country of origin. Some universities and archives also house such cultural property. It is clear to see that in the last 15 years or so, the demands in this regard, the development of implementation concepts and concrete realizations on the initiative of the cultural institutions concerned, but also under pressure from museum associations, and finally also from the governments concerned on both sides, have gained considerable momentum. The endeavors to repatriate or restitute essentially relate to tangible heritage, But what about intangible cultural property that has been taken possession of outside the country or society of origin? I would like to address this question using the example of ethnological or cultural anthropological film, which brings me to the actual topic of my speech. What is the ethnographic or the cultural anthropological film? This type of film documents group specific interactions, ways of life or work, customs and rituals, music, dances, games, but also oral traditions. Topics related to work can include agriculture, livestock farming, fishing, harvesting methods, food preparation, textile and jewelry production, the manufacture of households and work tools, house building, and so on and so on. Customs and rituals can relate to stages of life such as birth, initiation, marriage and death, and/or to religion, seasons, and historical events. I would also include in this major film genre the documentaries on human ethology, the study of human behavior that developed in the 60s. Many of these documentaries have also been made in African societies. Let's take a brief look at the history. Let's see its characteristics, the themes, the objectives, the admission requirements, and dramaturgy have developed and changed over time. The diversity of the material may lead to different assessments of how to proceed with the archived material. The early beginnings, that's the phase from the late 19th century to the 1920s, the phase one. Shortly after the intervention of film in 1895, it was also seen as a scientific recording instrument. Expeditions take film cameras with them to document exotic customs and landscapes, footage of indigenous people on islands in the Torres Strait between Australia and Papua New Guinea, taken during an anthropological expedition from Cambridge University, is regarded as the first ethnographic film material ever. The ethnographic film of this phase are characterized by a static camera and a complete lack of dramaturgy. The subjects are labor techniques, domestic chores, gestures, dances, and rituals. These are inevitably silent films, of course, in this time. Explanations or commentaries, for example, in the form of intertitles or subtitles, are missing. These films appear exotic to the Western viewer. For us today, of course, very exotic. In the era of colonialism, this effect was entirely intentional. It was intended to manifest the superiority of the colonial societies. Eroticism also plays a role. At the fairs, the ethnographic short films that were almost regularly included in the program of the traveling cinematographs, included in the variety program of the fairs, that helped the traveling cinematographs to draw crowds. Today, the films often have a disturbing effect on us. I want now to show you an example. It's a film produced in 1908, archived today in the Austrian Mediathek. And it's one of the earliest ethnographic films produced by Rudolf Pösch, an ethnographer and filmmaker. The image and the sound of this short film were synchronized later, as I remember well, in the 20s. And this film shows San, a bushman, speaking into a phonograph, talking or telling his experience with elephants. Can we please start this film?
Voici un des premiers exemples d'enregistrement simultané d'images et de sons. La synchronisation de cette séquence a été effectuée à Vienne en 1987, après la découverte du cylindre de cire Edison, porteur du son original.
Okay, thank you. We cannot understand him. That was a synchronized version of the 20s. It's very, very impressive. And you can find this film on YouTube. We come to the next phase, the phase 2, beginning in the 20s and ending at the end of the 40s. It's called the classic phase. The aforementioned characteristic also characterize the ethnographic film genre of this phase, the second phase. Added to this is a mixed form of documentary and staged action. Films are no longer purely observational. Actions are partly reenacted. The film producer influences the events, often from a colonial point of view and with deliberately exoticizing depictions. It is characterized by, I want to say, ethnographic paternalism. And we will see now an example produced in the 40s. It's very difficult to get access to earlier films in the online mediatheks because there are mostly problems concerning the copyright. That's a big problem. So let's have the next impression. It's produced for the Institute of the Scientific Film in Germany, Institut für den wissenschaftlichen Film, and shows the life of Fella people in Egypt. These films of this time, of this period, are mostly without sound too, and without any explanation by titles, sometimes by intertitles, but not by subtitles. Okay, can we scroll on a little bit, the film? Okay. So we can see handicraft, we can see cooking. preparing the building of a house and so on. Okay, thank you. We stop here. The next phase 3, from the 1940s to the 1960s, is characterized by emerging systematic ethnographic film research. Portable cameras and synchronous tone enable more authentic observation. Occasionally, a targeted dramaturgy finds its way into filmmaking, and the films are directed. One famous film producer was Margaret Diaz from Portugal. She produced a lot of films in Mozambique and Angola between 1958 and 1961, including the people which were filmed in the decisions of the content and the dramaturgy of the film. The next phase from 70s to 90s is called the phase of turn to reflection and participation of the affected. This phase is characterized by scientific critical examination of the colonial illusion of objectivity. Researchers and filmmakers begin to question their own role and position of power. They begin to work together with the filmed communities. Filmed people participate with original sound, interviews are introduced, and the mixture of on and off-screen sound lends the film a narrative character. In addition, indigenous filmmakers are beginning to document their own culture on film, to document by themselves. We see the next example. Can you please show the next example? It's the Night of the Bride Purchase, produced in Morocco for the Austrian Federal Institute of the Scientific Film. Would you scroll, please, to the 3rd minute? Okay, we stop here. Thank you. And then the last phase, phase 5, from the 2000s until today, digital technologies and smartphones, of course, enable self-representation by members of cultural communities. The ethnographic film becomes self-determined. However, this does not necessarily mean objectivation. Instead of factual documentation, film can also serve to assert subjective interest, conscious influencing, for example, through dramatization, suppression or whitewashing of circumstances, through demarcation and exclusion, politicization. Topics of recent ethnographic films today include cultural identity, post-colonialism, migration, urbanization, changing in living spaces and living conditions. I would like to briefly summarize the characteristics associated with the history of ethnographic film and what I consider to be the most important problem areas resulting from this. Because this gives rise to ethical and legal questions relating to the use and the accessibility of film. One point is the power asymmetry and colonial legacy. Filmmakers filmed others from a dominant, often exoticizing perspective. Another problem is the consent of those affected. Standard today sees the right to the one's own image, but not obtained in the past. The people filmed must agree to what the film material is used for and how it is used. The scope of the use of the film was probably not communicated to the people filmed during the colonial era, or perhaps could not have been communicated. Even the filmmaker could not have foreseen that generations later, digitalization technologies and the internet would lead to unmanageable possibilities for using the film material. There is even the case that film people were deliberately kept from being filmed for scientific reasons, in order not to influence normal interpersonal behavior and everyday social interactions by filming them. For example, the people concerned were filmed around the corner, so to speak, using a special camera in which a mirror turned the angle of view of the subject by 45 degrees. From the 1960s onwards, the well-known Austrian behavioral researcher and founder of human ethology, Irenäus Eibel-Eibesfeld, used this technique during numerous research visits, including in Africa, for example, with Kalahari Bushmen in Namibia and Botswana. This technique or research method raises the question, does the research objective or objectivity take precedence over the consent of the human research subjects? I will show you a very, there you can see Irenäus Eibel-Eibesfeld in Africa, and a very nice film that demonstrates the same behavior all over the world is his short movie Eye Contact between mother and child. Would you please start the film? I hear that link doesn't work. In Bonn, it didn't work. Okay, so, okay, sorry. Cultural differences in the understanding of consent to the film recordings are a further problem. For example, when a leader of a community agrees, but individuals in the community do not want this, or generally, when the scope of the effect of the film content on viewers from other cultures cannot be assessed. Representation and stereotyping. The danger of factual distortions through selection, through commentary, and the danger of exoticization in order to fascinate Western viewers. Staging versus authenticity. The reenactment of scenarios, the tension between truthful documentation and dramatization. Privacy and sensitive content. Film footage can show intimate, sacred, or culturally protected areas and practices. Publication can lead to cultural damage or misunderstandings. Self-representation versus external representation. When outsiders film, their own cultural values and ways of thinking can influence the footage and film design, despite all claims to factual and scientific accuracy. Following this overview, we will now address the aspects that may be relevant in connection with the provision of film material to the societies and countries affected. There will be pros and cons, and we will encounter problems. And we will not be able to resolve all the problems and open questions here in this round. First, the filmic as well photographic documentation of social cultural objectivities such as work techniques, customs, rituals, and other interpersonal or communal activities does not expropriate them from their practicing society. Appropriation of immaterial culture is not possible. The film itself as hardware, as a data carrier of immaterial culture, does not originate from the culture or society concerned. The film is the property of the producer or the institution commissioning and sending it. Thus, from a purely proprietary point of view, the society concerned has no claim to restitution or repatriation. We must discuss this. Without film documentation, many cultural artifacts from the past would be lost today. After all, there have also been developments in the societies of origin. Forms of actions and behavior have changed or been abandoned. As a rule, however, this change has not been documented by the affected society itself. Documentary film is therefore a unique historical source, the preservation of which must be ensured by adequate means. Whether this would have been or is possibly the society concerned is highly questionable. It is therefore understandable that the old analog film material in Western archives, which is susceptible to conservation, should be protected. But now, dear colleagues, comes the but. As we will see later on by attempting to typify it historically, ethnographic film is not the same as ethnographic film. It ranged from pure film production by Western foreigners in early film history to the active, creative, and thus influential participation of the affected society in the production, also on an equal footing in recent decades. It would be unjustifiable in the society concerned, its country, an adequate museum or archives there could not dispose of film copies and their use. To return to the thesis 3, documentary film as a source of past objectifications can create or promote a culture of remembrance in the affected society. Film can promote social identity. That this would also be a reason to give the society access to the film. But when watching the film, the affected society may ask itself, this is how we used to live, to life. This is how we used to be. We were that primitive. We are not like that anymore. We don't want to have anything more to do with that. Society may reject the film, may resist its use. But it can also be the state concerned, for example, as a successor to a colony which has no interest in film footage of the archaic, primitive, and backward still being accessible. Because such footage is a reminder of an unpleasant political and social past. Because it is not compatible with the country's development policy concept and current identity. I would like to give the example of a very well-known and equally controversial film that is one of the key works of the ethnographic film art. It was in 1955 that the French ethnologist and filmmaker Jean Rouch released Les Maîtres Fous, the Mad Masters. It shows a possession ceremony of the Hauka movement, a religious movement among laborers and migrants in the British colony of Gold Coast, today Ghana. The film shows trance states, ritual dances, foaming at the mouth, the ritual sacrifice of a dog, followed by a communal meal, and the imitation of colonial rulers with uniforms, stern looks, and commands. Can we see some sequences, please, of this film? Can you please scroll the film a little bit? A little bit more, please. A little bit more.
Avec la femme d'un de mes camarades. Depuis 2 mois, je suis impuissant.
Scroll, please, a little bit more. Yeah, stop.
Il demande du feu. Du feu. Pour se brûler, pour montrer qu'il n'est plus un homme, mais un haouka.
Scroll a little bit more, please. Yeah, stop.
Puis le lieutenant casse un œuf sur la tête du gouverneur. Pourquoi un œuf? Pour imiter le plumet que les gouverneurs britanniques portent sur leur casque. Car le voilà, le véritable gouverneur. Au trooping de Colors, de l'ouverture de l'Assemblée à Accra. Et dans cette foule, il y a des haoukas qui sont venus ici pour chercher leur modèle. Et si l'ordre est différent,
Scroll a bit, little bit more.
Le protocole
Stop.
Mais la bête est à peine égorgée que des haoukas se précipitent pour boire directement le sang à la gorge ou pour lécher la pierre. Alors, Madame Docteur, commence le dépeçage. Le capitaine va mettre les estafettes.
Okay, I think we can stop here. We have got some impressions. Thank you. This film was accused of sensationalism, namely a focus on the extreme and spectacular, as well as disrespect for intimate rituals that were cultural in need of protection. It was also disputed whether the people filmed understood the intention of the later publication and had consented to it. Today, the full-length film is available to everyone on YouTube, which I think is very problematic. In Ghana, the film has been banned because the authorities found it offensive and harmful to the nation. At worst, the film documentation of the cultural past of an affected society could even cause immense damage to that society if this documentation falls into the hands of those in power. Used as a means of propaganda against that society, it could be misused to justify oppression, persecution, and expulsion, even genocide. In addition to all the aforementioned aspects of the pros and cons of making film material available to those affected, and the joint agreement regarding the use of the film, formal legal aspects must also be taken into account. Copyright and exploitation rights are involved in the right to one's own image in relation to the people filmed can also play a role. Even in the case of early documentary films made during the colonial era, copyright law may still need to be taken into account as it provides for the creator to be protected for 50 years post-mortem, and sometimes, as in Germany, for 70 years. It is even more complicated with the right of personality. Does it even apply? Can it even be observed? For example, if people were filmed without their proven consent in the 1970s and are still alive or have only recently died, does the German right, for example, the German right of personality, which dates back to 1907, also apply to recordings in another country? This right states that after the death of the person filmed, their descendants may decide on the use of the recording for 10 years. In my view, however, all legal barriers that prevent film copies from being made available to the communities or countries of origin must be removed. Existing copyrights and the exploitation rates must therefore be subordinated to the higher goal of making films accessible. None of us are lawyers and cannot answer such legal questions. The respective situations would also be too different and complex to clarify in my presentation. Another fundamental point, in my view, the distribution of film copies must also be accompanied by commentary. A file on the film document is required in which experts from both the country of origin and the target country explain and contextualize the historical, political, and social background of the film's production. This is essential for understanding the film. Where are ethnographic or ethnographically influenced films archived in Europe, and how are they accessible? I will come now to the last part of my presentation. Large ethnographic film collections can be found in scientific film archives all over the world. However, I found that ethnographic film material from phase 1, that's the phase up to 1920, and also from the early phase 2, before 1935, can hardly be found through online research in European film archives. However, ChatGPT refers to some source. One source is the colonial film website of the United Kingdom. You see here the address. This website with catalog is funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council and features films from the British Film Institute, BFI, in London, the Imperial War Museum, London, and the British Empire and Commonwealth Museum in London, which is liquidated in between. Usually, the earliest film listed in the archive databases date from the mid of the 1930s. Then we have here another page of this archive. Then we have the Cinémathèque Afrique in Paris. It's a department of the Institut Français in Paris, and we can try to go to the website now. The Cinémathèque Afrique archives around 1,760 films, of which around 660 are made available for non-commercial public screenings. The search function takes you to the categories and then to the individual film titles. Of these 660 films, 305 fall into the documentary category. Ethnographic works or works with an ethnographic reference can be tracked down via their subcategories. The countries of production of the films in the documentary category are Algeria, Angola, Benin, Burkina Faso, Burundi, Cameroon, Cape Verde, Comoros, Chad, Congo, Côte d'Ivoire, Egypt, Ethiopia, Gabon, Guinea, Madagascar, Mali, Mauritius, Morocco, Mozambique, Niger, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, Rwanda, Sudan, South Africa, Togo, Tunisia, the Central African Republic, and Zimbabwe. A lot of countries are represented in this collection. The documentary films were produced in the following years. Before 1950s, we find two productions produced in Congo about the labor of Pygmies and about Tuareg in Niger. Then we have around about 90 films from 1950 to 1969, 173 films from 1970 to 1999, and from 2000 to present 74 films. For non-commercial use, accreditation with the Cinematheque is required. This means that the films cannot be downloaded directly from the website. The Cinematheque can therefore first inquire about the intended context of use. Then we have another, can we stop please? Yeah. Then we have the Royal Anthropological Film Institute, the Royal Anthropological Institute Film Archive in London. This archive contains a total of 107 films from Algeria, Angola, Botswana, Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Cape Verde, Egypt, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Ghana, Guinea-Bissau, Ivory Coast, Kenya, Lesotho, Madagascar, Malawi, Mali, Morocco, Namibia, Nigeria, Senegal, Sierra Leone, South Africa, Sudan, Tanzania, Togo, Tunisia, and Uganda. The earliest African-related films date from 1963. There we have 3 films found in this archive. All other films are produced between 1964 and 2024. The online film catalog available on the website contains search functions by production year and country, as well as a keyboard search by subject area. It also provides a summary of the content of each film. The respective film can be purchased only in digitalized form or viewed for fee via a watch-on-demand function. It appears that none of the films are blocked for public viewing. Then we have the Austrian Mediathek, die österreichische Mediathek in Vienna. Some ethnographic films relating to Africa are directly accessible to everyone and are archived in the Austrian Archive for Sound and Video Recordings from Cultural and Contemporary History. These are mainly films from the period around 1960 to the end of 1980s. They are largely productions of the former Österreichisches Bundesinstitut für den wissenschaftlichen Film, the Austrian Federal Institute for Scientific Film. Topics include collective first marriages in the high Atlas Mountains. We have seen an example. Masked dances in Malawi, ritual blood washing among the body in southern Ethiopia, etc., etc. But there's also a very early short film from 98 we have seen. This film, the Bushman speaking into the phonograph. I had a very constructive conversation with the director of this media center, Gabriele Fröschel. Among other things, she wrote, "We are not aware whether the countries or cultures in which the films were recorded are aware of their existence, or that our institute before its dissolution or that the Austrian Scientific Film Institute before its dissolution, or the film producers provided them with relevant information, showed them ways of using the data or even made film copies available. The institution was dissolved at the end of the 1990s, and the collection was handed over to us. We don't have any documents on communication with the affected societies or countries. Regarding the release of film copies to societies or countries of origin, Mrs. Fröschel wrote, all relevant films have been made available online by us, except for one film for which the consent of the copyright successor is still pending. We are happy to provide copies of the films, but we do not know the production conditions under which the films were made, or where we could provide digital copies. In addition, most of the films still have the copyright of the filmmakers, which we cannot dispose of. This means that we are happy to pass on copies, but we cannot make any promises regarding their use, as we do not have the corresponding rights. Then we have, that's the last example, the Leibniz Informationszentrum Technik und Naturwissenschaften, the Leibniz Information Center for Science and Technology of the University Library in Hanover. There was also an institute for scientific film in Germany, like in Austria, which had produced a lot of ethnological films. Following the dissolution of this institute in 2010, these films were transferred to the holdings of the Leibniz Information Center for Science and Technology in Hanover. With its audiovisual portal, this information center offers a free and non-commercial online platform for using and sharing scientific videos, as well as teaching and educational videos, and thus also the film material from the former Institute for the Scientific Film and its predecessor institutions. However, a lot of films are not initially accessible to the public, even if they are listed in the open access category. To use them, you must contact the archive. A total of around about 500 ethnographic films relating to Africa from the period 19 36 to 2007 are listed, 231 of them as video. A search function allows users to search by location or region where the films were shot. There are 96 films for Sudan alone and 49 films for the Ivory Coast. On inquiry, the institute, this archive, wrote to me, the societies of origin are usually informed about the existence of the films. Most of the films were produced for research purposes by researchers in cooperation with the ethnic groups themselves. Before filming began, the film authors usually established a friendly relationship of trust. Many of the scientific films authors had maintained contact with the communities of origin. Then it was also told the metadata of all ethnological films are available in German and English in the audiovisual portal under free licenses for viewing, downloading, and reuse free of charge. However, depending on the format of the material, the existing copyright and personal rights, and the film content, not all films can be made freely available on this portal. However, researchers can be given access to the film after registering. This supports all research projects, the archive supports all research projects that deal with this film material and cooperates with researchers, institutions, museums worldwide, and also from the societies of origin on request. In addition, the archive actively seeks to acquire cooperation partners with expertise in cultural anthropology. For example, there is close cooperation with the Department of History of the Leibniz University in Hanover, which organizes the Atlantic Studies Master program. And on request, the archive cooperates too with the governments and institutions of the countries of origin, as well as directly with the societies. Dear colleagues, here are some countries. Dear colleagues, earlier, no, I will shorten a little bit. Dear colleagues, I would like to conclude by giving you some examples of measures that have already been taken to provide ethnographic film material to Africa. The Leibniz Library Institute, the Leibniz Information Center, I just mentioned, has already initiated corresponding measures, but not yet in relation to Africa. However, after the dissolution of the Institute of Scientific Film in Germany, the Deutsches Bundesarchiv, the German Federal Archives, handed over digital copies of German ethnographic films, for example, from the 1930s, such as those of the Herero, Nama, and Damara, to the National Archive of Namibia. The Cinémathèque Royale de Belgique has made copies of colonial documentary films from the 1930s to 1950s, shot in what was then the Belgian Congo, available to Congolese cultural institutions. The special thing about this is that it was accompanied by projects that critically analyze the colonial visual language. the Archives Nationales d'Outre-mer, the National Overseas Archives in the French Aix-en-Provence, and the Centre National du Cinéma et de l'Image Animée, the National Center for Cinema and Animated Image in Paris, have handed over digital copies of films from Mali, Senegal, and Burkina Faso from the 1930s to the 1950s to the corresponding national archives. In the Returning Visual Histories project, the University of Cape Town has acquired digital copies of films from the colonial era and the apartheid era from the Royal Anthropological Institute in London, among others. The special feature is a co-curation. The communities concerned decide for themselves which films may be shown publicly. Copies of British ethnographic films from Anglo-Egyptian Sudan from the 1920s to the 1950s have also been handed over to the Sudan National Museum and the Sudan Film Group Archive. Special feature, these films were shown in the country for the first time in decades at festivals in Khartoum. Dear colleagues, ethnographic films, once hidden from the society they came from, now handed over in a high-profile manner and shown at festivals, getting lots of attention. Are we on the right track? Thank you very much for your attention, and if you want, we can debate a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for this important communication. I agree with you. Copyright should cover the rights of the authors, and so we can't understand why the laws are different between a book and a film, because the film is the artificial intelligence is a production of skill and spirit, and is similar to other material means for immaterial things. So I think that European laws are putting in the same situation all the spirit productions, and so we hope to have good results about our desires. We have 5 minutes of discussion, and if you have more questions, we can move towards the final round table. So very quick request here, major ones later. Thank you. Brenda. Yeah. No, it's coming, it's coming.
Thank you very much. Documenting is something that is obviously in today's world very important. But as long as the subjects being captured have not consented to their image being used, then why are we even having a conversation on the fact that the producers or the people who are actually documenting have some form of right if the actual people who are being captured don't know of the use of this footage. There obviously is where the footage was taken, so there's a place where consent can be gotten. And number two is, who has put this footage up on YouTube? Is it an institution? And if it's with the knowledge that the persons who are being captured don't know that their footage is up on YouTube, then shouldn't it be taken down?
I can imagine that the producers in the early time of the ethnographic film
Please,
sorry.
yeah.
I can imagine that the filmmakers, producers in the early phases of film production, they couldn't imagine what could be happen with films later. They have produced for their own scientific work or for their institution, a research institution, ethnographic institution, university. And they couldn't imagine that it would be possible to, for example, to make a lot of copies of films and distributing them to places maybe all over the world. Of course, they couldn't imagine that a world of digitization, of online communication would appear in the future. So it was very normal for them to, yeah, maybe they've asked the affected community, can I make a short movie? Yeah, but they couldn't explain what would happen with the results in the future. And the problem today is really the law. For example, I told that in Germany we have the right of personality post-mortem, 70 years. In some African countries, this post-mortem phase is longer. So it's normally these films couldn't be used, couldn't be shown in the public. I think it's a big problem, and it also concerns giving copies to the affected societies, because at first it's not allowed to open the archive of these films. Is that what you wanted to ask?
Who are captured, thank you. The communities who are captured haven't given consent to date in some of those films. And two, some of those films are now on the internet, YouTube, like you said. Since we know better now, shouldn't we ensure that these communities have given their consent, if they're giving their consent, and have rights, royalties accorded to them, because some of this footage is earning some revenue? And three, I think it's about human dignity that we have talked about through the conference. So isn't it time for them to see that footage and either give consent or decline the consent and have the footage taken down if they decline it?
I would like to give the question to you all.
Yeah. No, I think that, may I reply? Yeah. And then Terry. I think that for all the films made before the arriving of the concept of copyright didn't have the authorization of the person who were filmed, surely. That's is the same thing than the photograph. The photograph, that is the rules, and perhaps that's the reason why, according to the much more sensibility towards the communities that some African countries don't allow to show the films, because it's clear that they don't have the authorization of the persons who were filmed.
But the German copyright law is not a young law. It's from 1907. It's the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Michael, for your presentation. And even I was thinking through the issues of rights of the people who were filmed, and even when some people that did the filming came from countries that had laws for copyrights, the issue is that the power dynamics then were very, very different, and that the people did not have any idea sometimes of what was being done and where the films were going, what they were going to be used for, even just for study and research. Sometimes these things were taken without the local people knowing fully what this was being done for. And I think people have an ethical obligation to go back to these communities, and most of them are still extant. So they are not extinct, and they are there, and we know where they came from. And like you could enumerate the many countries where these films were taken, it's important to go back, engage. And not only for engaging to ask for their consent, but also to learn, because in some of the films that you showed, especially the silent ones, it says, they're here, we don't know what they were talking about. Now, I'll pick one example of what you showed there, which I could relate with coming from Africa. The one where the cows were in the water and the two canoes, and the two young men paddling around the cows, and it would look like to somebody, oh, they're admiring the cows. No, actually, they are protecting the cows. Protecting them from what? Usually from crocodiles. So they will be paddling around and tapping on the waters so that they don't so that crocodiles don't come to where the cows are. And if should any one of the cows be attacked by the crocodiles, then the paddlers will come close, and then they'll be stamping with those paddles in the sand, because it's in the shallow waters, to scare the crocodile away. And that's what it was from me. But if we take time to go back and engage the people, then we get more of meaning and add context to those videos. Otherwise, being like that and staying away from where they were taken, then they are meaningless. Lastly, it's the comment, we're talking about decolonization, and when we talk about decolonization, part of it is the language that we use, which must change. And I see, for instance, Bushman talking in the thing. And for many Africans, that is a derogatory term right now. They say who they are. They are the son, not the Bushman, and so on. So these are things that we have to take into consideration many times we engage in this dialogue. Thank you.
Okay, we have coming to an end, but I have to confirm that I have used Wikipedia for how to say, have I to say Bushman or have I to say San, and it is very, very complicated, but some of the groups, they want to be called as San, and others say, no, we are no San, we are others, and some say, want to have the traditional word Bushman. Also it's very complicated for our. It's like in Europe, Sinti und Roma and so on. Yeah, and Zigeuner, today we say Sinti und Roma, but I know a lot of them. I've worked with them in a scientific way. And what do they say over themselves? We are Zigeuner. It is a problem. Yeah, it is very, very complicated. I can offer, that's my last words, I can offer that ICOM, as the specialized committee in ICOM, can help you to research institutions, archiving, ethnographic films, documentary films concerning your country or your region.
Well,
yeah?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Juliana,
Thank you very much.
I think there was
No, we should move further requests in the following after the following in the roundtable final, please.
Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I have the pleasure to introduce myself. I'm Elke Kellner from ICOM Austria, Managing Director and also board member from ICOM Europe. Please give me a few seconds to set myself up and then we can start with the poster session. Just to start with and connecting to the discussion we just had right now, I think it's also about the balance of power this ethnographical film show, and it's a clear imbalance because it shows it's not neutral. Those documentaries want to have the impression that they are neutral, but they are strongly representing a certain view. It's the male gaze, it's the colonial gaze, it's something that seems to show the facts, which are not facts actually. This is something when we watch television, when we watch films, we are easily tricked into. And this clearly shows a white male gaze on the world, on the African countries, on the African people, And it very much reminded me on an Austrian film from the 90s that reacted to these kind of ethnographical films. It was called the Feast of the Chicken, and it shows it the other way around. It shows an African film team coming to Austria, to a rural village, where they have this yearly celebration, where they're drinking and eating chicken and having their dances, and the African film team in this movie is filming those strange traditions the Austrians have with the strange things they have on and the strange dances they have and how drunk they get. And the African people who are coming there, they don't really understand what's going on, and they say, oh, it's madness, kind of what they're doing, and they're documenting these strange customs that are going on in Austria. And I think this is the same feeling that we get when we watch those ethnographic documentaries. So just forgive me, I had to put this out there to contribute in this discussion. And starting with what we want to do also, and maybe imbalance of power, we now have a short time contrasting a long lecture with short presentations, poster presentations. You see them up behind me already. We have received a great number of scientific presentations to shortly give us an idea what some recent studies are addressing. I really wanted to give you a longer introduction about why this is important, about the role of museums as public spaces in an open society, who are giving us not only emotional and aesthetic experiences, but also a focus on the challenges of today's life and give us some direction, give us facts, how to navigate those times of crisis and times of insecurity. And I think it's vital to museums to confront their own history in that context. And we had heard a couple of lectures already contributing to that, who demanded a systematic restitution policy, who demand to really regard those contested objects, to demand the public awareness of our colonial past and the responsibility of museums to really address this. And this, as you well know, has arisen to quite intensive discussions in the international museum community about those questions. And ICOM, I think, is aware of this special role of museums dealing with responsibilities, and I'm very happy that we are here for these 2 days to address all those questions and to make sure that also those basic principles are reflected in the ICOM Code of Ethics, in the new drafts, where we still have some work to do, I think, but I hope we are on a good way with conferences like that to find common solution, to start a dialogue, to have equal collaborations and partnerships and all those questions. I shortened my part a little bit, so I don't take away too much of your time. In Austria, we had we were always saying we are not a really colonial country. We didn't have colonies in such a kind, but of course Austria has its own history of colonization or participation in colonial businesses also. And in 2019, we organized a workshop and lectures together with the Ministry of Culture, and also published a publication that is addressing objects from the federal collections and their colonial past. And I think this kind of provenience research really has to be the scientific basis of our dialogue, to really revisit all the objects we have, to look at our collections and find solutions for every one of them. Culture is about our identity, about our origins. It's about protecting witnesses of the past, preserving those values that could help today for a better tomorrow. Heritage is a force of resistance. It's a source of strength. The protection and preservation of our shared cultural heritage is vital for security and hopefully peace in the future. The responsibility we have to prepare to assume is reflected in the ways we treat the objects with a burdened history. The strategies to do so have to be developed jointly, and this conference hopefully is another step towards that goal. Then our following poster presentations will show examples of the efforts being made in the field of museums and research institutions. And I'm very happy that Sofia Bollo, she is our first presenter. She's stepping in for Anna Antonini for the MUDEC Museum of Cultures of Milan in Italy. Anna couldn't be with us today, and the project title Sofia is now presenting to us is A Different Narrative of the Colonial Past and a Reinterpretation Within the Contemporary Context. We have short contributions, about 5 to 7 minutes. Thank you.
Sure, even less. But the first second will be also dedicated to who's in charge for maybe putting the poster that I'm discussing on the slide, because I might see another poster, or maybe we switch speaker.
No,
what it's
no. Go ahead with the.
It would be really strange to talk about a poster that you don't see.
You say stop when it's yours. Go ahead. Go. No.
I can start then introducing myself while we find the right poster. So I am Sofia Bollo. I'm really happy to be here to listen, to exchange, and to learn from all of you. You will not see my name on the poster because I'm now coordinating a working group on provenance research under ICOM Italy. Erika Grasso mentioned it briefly. We were born 2 years ago, and we've been working and advocating for the importance of provenance research in collections that are now in Italy. We're a group of researchers and people coming from different disciplines, and this is actually what makes us really unique, and we really want to bring the provenance research in Italy to a level that all museums can really put this into practice. Also to make sure that what we read in the Code of Ethics doesn't really remain like empty recommendations, but it's put into practice, and we want to make it happen in Italy. MUDEC, it's a museum of cultures in Milan. It's part of this working group, and that's why I'm now standing next to this poster, so to make sure that someone is talking about them. So, Museum of Culture in Milan is a center dedicated to the interdisciplinary research on world cultures, and has engaged with contemporary debates on museum practices influenced by post-colonial and decolonial theories, and has been working with international communities now living in Milan, so diasporic groups, with an ongoing dialogue. In the middle, you see a picture of a group standing in the museum, and that's part of a workshop series that they initiated in 2019 for an ongoing project, for a project to install and design the permanent gallery. The gallery opened in 2021, and it's a result of this collaborative projects that have been developed within the Museum of Culture in Milan. Another thing that I would like to mention is that MUDEC is also the initiator of a network of museums with heritage from world culture that are now stored in Italy, the so-called MIPAM, M-I-P-A-M, which was created and over the last year, and formally was launched on the 10th of June this year. And It groups many different museums, not only the Museum of Civilizations that we've heard of, not only the MUDEC, which is also very big collections on the Italian territory, but also many other small museums, university museums, civic museums, even like one single collector museums. And to us, this is really important because that would allow for a more deepened research on provenance of collectors that have maybe less visibility to the public, but they are as much important to be researched and they deserve our attention as well. I'm gonna stop here so we have enough time for all the other posters that you've seen. There's many. So thank you for your attention. And if you have any question or anything, we'll be here today and tomorrow. So I'm happy to talk to any of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you for stepping in last minute. I hope you already had the time to see the beautiful exhibition outside. You can see all the posters published there, of course. And now for the second one, it's Laura Fabian, University of Glasgow. Is she here? Yes. Please come on stage. Her project title is The Long-Term Loans as a Tool to Decolonize the Museum. Can we search, if I get the little pressing thing, I could search for the poster myself, or?
I've seen it earlier.
No?
Yeah, this
Yes,
one.
this is the right one, thank you. Yes, okay, thank you so much. All right, please go ahead.
Yeah, mine is more of an open question to the museum professional. It's part of my master thesis that I wrote for the Erasmus Mundus program on managing art and cultural heritage. Am I too far away? Sorry. In global markets, and in my thesis, I researched. Can I? No. Okay, choose. Okay, yeah, I'll be closer. So it's, again, it's more of an open question to you as museum professionals. I researched more theoretically, and some of the examples I found are in this research, and could be one of the tools for decolonizing museums, stipulating long-term loans. There was one of the examples when long-term loans are stipulated and keep it in organizations, that there's a transfer of ownership, and I found this was a very relevant example for this conference, and so I'm really hoping for the discussion. What's the examples in your institution, and the conclusion also thanks to the ICOM code of ethics that say that there should be the restitution of object to the rightful owner. Of course, this is the main conclusion, but there are some legal constraints that might not allow it. So this was my contribution for this poster session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is a question, I think, that concerns many museums, where the collection often are state-owned and not owned by the museum. So if the museum itself has this scientific process and decides we would like to repatriate, we would like to give this object back, they oftentimes have to consult with the politicians, with the state-owned collections to be able to do so, and maybe long-term loans can be a way around that. But I also very much like the idea of a colleague that was discussed yesterday, to have this kind of circulating objects, to have objects from Europe, European heritage travel to Africa, and vice versa, to see the influences we have from each other. So the next one is Yutong Lee from the University of Bologna. She here? No? All right. She was on my list, but not obviously here. So we proceed to the next one, is Ms. Nima Pendeza Mvana, Head of Antiquities from the Tanzania National Parks, Breaching Continents to Safeguard Deep Time, a call for collaborative research at the Ismailia Stone Age site. And she distributed this very nice folder already, and will give us a short presentation about the poster and the research that is done on these geological and archaeological sites. Please, go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm so happy to be here, and I have learned a lot from all the presentations. I'm very happy. My name is Neema Mbwana, and I'm working with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Tourism from Tanzania and Tanzania National Parks. And I am also, as she introduced me, I am the coordinator or head of antiquities in Tanzania National Parks. I am responsible in taking care of 5 heritage sites that are mandated to Tanzania National Parks. I hope everyone have got this one. I've printed for everyone. So I don't have to say much because I'm sure you have read a lot. So, as I said, Tanzania National Parks now is mandated to take care of 5 heritage sites. You could see the other sites, but today we are talking about Isimila Stone Age site. But on the back, you can see the other sites that are mandated to Tanzania National Parks. When you look to our daily life, especially in Africa, you realize that nature and culture cannot be separated. In the process of conserving national parks in Tanzania, many cultural heritage sites have been discovered within these protected areas. For example, if you visit Ruaha National Park, there are plenty of cultural resources, and just like many other national parks in Tanzania, you might find a lot of cultural assets inside the national parks, like rock paintings, sacred sites, ancient settlements, historical ritual places inside the national parks. And that's why you can see that Tanzania National Parks is responsible for taking care of national parks, but still the government have seen there's a very big reason to why it should be mandated to the cultural sites. So among these sites that I've said, now is Isimila Stone Age site, located in Iringa, the southern part of Tanzania. The site has a very significant archaeological and paleontological, it is an archaeological and a paleontological site. And it can be taken as an evidence that shows clear evidence of early human making tools and weapons. In fact, it can also be seen as a factory of tool making, where we find large numbers and many varieties of stone tools together, such as hand axing, clevers, picks, scrapers. All of these, you could find them in plenty at Isimila Stone Age site. Different researchers has come to Isimila and did the researches. The first research was done in 1950s, but other researchers also came in 2009. As I said earlier, the site also has a museum on it. So we have five historical sites, but every site has a museum. So every researcher that come and research in the collection are put in these museums that are on site. So also local communities are already a center to the resource promotion as guides and custodians, and their involvement ensure that Isimila remains in the living heritage. But yet today, Isimila faces serious challenges: soil erosion, which threatens both the archaeological records and its iconic pillars. So we have natural pillars in the site, but because of soil erosions, now this becomes a problem. And this is why we are here today to call out for researchers to visit our sites, Isimila Stone Age sites, so that together we can research together and we can collect together for our museum to safeguard Isimila so that Isimila can be there for next generation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's a really, really important archaeological and geological site, and thank you so much for presenting that to us. The next one is Noémie Etienne. We had a very, very productive breakfast in the morning with Sophia Bolo, and she is also stepping in for a student named Cécile Mendy, who should do the presentation, but Etienne will step in. And the presentation is about preserving Africa through Africa, local knowledge and indigenous challenges in conservation. Please, Etienne, thank you.
Hi, hello again. I'm very happy to be presenting Cécile's poster and research. However, I'm very sorry to be taking the spot of another Black woman, an African woman from West Africa. And because I'm not Cécile, she's in the picture up, and some of you, I think, know her personally. And just as a side note, I really hope in the future we will have even more African women on the stage, and even taking maybe the leading roles, such as the keynote. I think that would be good for all of us. Thank you. Now, very quickly about Cécile's research. She's working on conservation and what it could be in the future, and also what it was in the past. And as you know, we have been using a lot of products, including chemical products, for preserving heritage. It has been done in Europe. It has been done in Africa as well. It's also often connected, so European techniques that have been used in Africa, and it has great consequences and bad consequences for the textile, for the people, for the environment. So Cécile is working on finding again, because some of this knowledge has been not lost, but simply alienated or taken away. And she's going back and talk to communities and talk to women, because it's a lot also about women and heritage and matrimoine, as we were saying, who preserve the knowledge she's interested in. And this is not always like elite people, it's not academic professors, it's not king or queens, it's a lot of people. And she goes back there and she asks about how they do that. And her idea is to reconstruct this knowledge, because it's not as if the knowledge was simply accessible. The knowledge has really been taken aside, as I was saying, but it still exists. And she proposes methods thinking about what a new form of conservation, ethical conservation, ecological conservation could be. And it doesn't mean we need to get rid of everything that was done before, because a lot of Western conservation works well. It's really important to keep it, but it means that we can use different techniques in Europe and in Africa. So it's not only for Africa, it's for also the museum in Europe, because they could actually, we could actually use less damageable product. And we will have to, because the earth is not in a good shape. So you will find her contact and her name on the poster. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much, Noémie. Yes, Cécile's contribution is very much in the trend of sustainability, of using natural resources, and to be more sustainable in museums, we have to target ourselves as well, to contribute to fight against the global climate crisis. So next one, you see it's a women power line of presentations here. It's Caroline Mbenda. She's the head of marketing in the National Museums of Kenya. And the title of her poster is Decolonizing Museums, Who is the Target and What is the Narrative? Caroline, please take the floor. So we've got your poster up already. I think the other steps over there.
Good afternoon. And it's a real privilege to be standing before my museum colleagues and experts from around the world. Thank you for this opportunity. At the British Museum, they call it a composite vessel of a gourd covered with beadwork in red, blue, and white, with leather bead-covered strap. My grandmother died at the age of 110 2 years ago. And what was her preferred activity is every night after our dinner, she would have a gourd full of milk, kefir, that she had made herself. And immediately after dinner, we would sit around her as she chanted and rhythmically shook the gourd. And this rhythmic shaking was breaking the lumps in the kefir. And her rhythmic shaking of the gourd was also with the chant, a song. But this chant and song was storytelling. And it was one of those stories that in African culture, it tells you or teaches you a lesson in character, in values. And she would continue with her rhythmic shaking of the gourd, and then there would be a click on the gourd, and she would stop. And we would all rush with our little cups to get our portion of the kefir. Now, in today's science, we have learned that a kefir after dinner, before you go to sleep, for those who can tolerate lactose, is very good one in, generating melatonin, as well as it has some magnesium, so it helps you sleep. So that little old lady who died at 110 without anyone's scientific schooling was feeding us using those same beaded gourds. The only thing you know from the British Museum is what it is called. A composite vessel of a gourd covered with beadwork in red, blue, white, with leather bead-covered strap. A lot of that is lost. A lot of my experience with the gourd is lost. And there are so many more different aspects of heritage that are lost to what we are calling the colonial way of showcasing items. What we are doing at the National Museums of Kenya is experiential work. So for example, when it comes to stone tools, especially with young men, boys in high school, we teach them how to create stone tools. So they go into stone knapping, and this is when they go into wild camping. And then they go into skinning an animal and roasting it for their dinner. This experiential practice moves them away from the PS stations, from their gaming, into actual knowledge of how there was rudimentally living, and it was fun and it was exciting. We need to decolonize by experiential practices so that these artifacts come to life. They are living heritage as we discuss them. And with the Gen Z and Gen Alpha who may never experience living with some of these collections we have, we must create a different way of engaging with heritage. It must be lived, it must be experienced, and the stories must be told by the communities they belong to. So we ask then that we co-curate these experiences, be it in European museums or in Africa, whichever way it is, we are co-creating with the communities to whom those collections belong so that we can all live this heritage. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Carolyn, for sharing this story and giving meaning to objects aside from just the aesthetical aspects that we see in some descriptions in museums. I think this is a very important step forward. The next on my list is Eva Namusoke from the University of Cambridge. She's also senior curator at the Fitzwilliam Museum, and the title of her poster is African Collections, Futures at the University of Cambridge, where she addresses 8 museums at the university in her research project.
Good time.
Eva, whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you. So I hope that people have had a chance to look at my poster or will after the session, so I'll just be brief about it. So my work is based at the University of Cambridge. I'm based at the Fitzwilliam Museum, but I actually work across the university's entire collections. So the 8 museums, Botanic Garden, University Library, various departments, herbarium. My work also looks at the Duckworth Lab, where the human and ancestral remains are at the University of Cambridge. And essentially what African Collections Futures is a project that's looking at what the African collections at Cambridge look like, where they came from, how they came to be at the university, and then sets out some strategies to improve how we engage with these various collections moving forward, with a main focus on increasing and improving access to the collections for African people, whether as communities of origin, whether as scholars, whether as just members of the public who are interested in seeing sort of various iterations of their sort of cultural and natural heritage. So on this point of access, and specifically access for African people, I really want to make the note that in the last sort of 15 minutes, you've heard from more African women than you have in this entire conference. So I'm a bit nervous. I literally just found out about doing this like a minute ago. And I want to make the note that it's unacceptable at a conference that is titled Skill Sharing Between African and European Museums, that, you know, we African women have been given essentially 15 minutes to speak. We've had multiple sessions, very interesting, very rich, but that have run way, way longer. And, you know, our time has been massively, massively cut, and our contributions have been, you know, had to be incredibly shrunk. I also want to note that we had an all-white panel this morning. Again, when we think about skills sharing, who's actually sharing skills with who? It's still a situation in which white Europeans are telling Africans how to do museums, essentially. So I encourage everybody to have a read of my poster. It's a situation that's kind of focused on Cambridge, but the ideas, the situation there is very similar in museums across Europe and replicated institutions across Africa. And yes, I, again, really want to make the point that it's not enough for the organizers to say that we're not going to have a situation like this in the future where we've had 4 keynotes and they were all men. I would really like to know how the organizers will be sitting down to discuss how this happened. How did you have a program that ended up looking this way? And what steps will you concretely be taking to make sure this doesn't happen in the future? Thank you.
Yes, completely agree. I think that there has to be a rethinking about the time concepts and also on the panels. I think we're giving here an impressive tour de force with the poster session that gives another perspective or room to many perspectives that are important for the conference. We have to try to not be trapped in visions that are not representing the many voices we want and should represent, especially voices of women. So the next one is Martina Terzoli, another woman. So we're trying to make up here and with very powerful, very dense and short contributions to bring in many perspectives. She's a curator from the Museo Egizio. She's talking about small objects, great meanings, about Egyptian objects, Egyptian amulets as a decolonial practice. And I'm very excited to hear about your research.
Thank you, and good afternoon to everyone. My main field of research is magic and amulets in ancient Egypt. And through this poster, I would like to highlight how museum research could become a concrete tool to try to decolonize our perspective. And the poster is divided into 4 main sections. I will be very short, I promise. The first one is loss and memory, because the most part of the amulets from all the Egyptological all over the world have lost their original function and meaning because they were widely sold on the antiquities market during the 19th century. And for this reason, they were studied and interpreted mainly by Western scholars and also through Western categories. That is a problem, because in which categories, for instance, magic is considered something like superstition and something obscure and negative, and not an important part of everyday life as it was in ancient Egypt, for instance. So this is the starting point. Then we have the museum as a place of care and dialogue, because of course, museum must be a place of care and dialogue. And care is exercised through research, of course. And for this reason, in my research project, I have followed a double approach. I have made a purely Egyptological study, trying to reconnect these objects to their original meanings, functions, and chronologies. And then I also made an archaeometric study in collaboration with the CNR in Catania, because I would like to shed light also on the production techniques of these objects, but mainly on the people that were behind these objects and produced and used these objects. Then we have the decolonizing the gaze, this section that I think that is the most difficult part of the work, of course. The museum has to make a critical reflection on itself, always. And museum in general does more than preserve, it transmits information for the future generations. And for this reason, all the data obtained by this research project will be made available on the website collection of the museum, not only for scholars, but also for the public in general. And also the study of emulates allow me to understand that there is not a single point of view to understand objects, but there are many different points of view. And the most important thing is that we need to start from the original point of view. That is the original point of view of the culture that produced these objects, and then we can question our perspectives, our Western perspective. And at the end, there is the anthropological perspective that is in this context, is the most important one for me, because emulates are really objects that preserve traces of universal human experiences, such as illness, childbirth, fears, or uncertainty. So this study of emulates allow me and allow us in general to explore in concrete a shared emotional universe that transcends time and geography and can connect different cultures and the past and the present. So we can understand that the fears of ancient Egyptians are also our fear still today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'm not sure if there is any other presenter for a poster that I have not. Yes, please, because I was not sure if I missed anybody. You are Kat Sommers? Yes, please. Please come on stage. And I'm not sure about your title because I don't have you on the list. You can for sure help me out on this one, and we'll put it up right away. The title of your poster.
The title is yeah, this one. Thanks.
Perfect. So we got it right away.
Yep.
Please go ahead.
I'll be quick as well. Thank you for having me. I work in the Photo Museum in Antwerp. I'm a researcher there in a collection, and I try to present 3 case studies in which we try to showcase how we aim to decolonize our museum. We're still a very wide institution, and we're often stuck, or we're unable to implement many things. And the 3 case studies are always involving external help. The first one is Recaptioning Congo by Dr. Sandrine Collard. It was an exhibition in 2022. And this one really was the start, the catalysator, the starting point for us to self-reflect. We don't hold that many colonial images in itself in our collection, but the camera is a colonial instrument. And I think this was already made clear through previous comments and like JC's story about the photograph of her grandfather, but also the documentaries we saw. The camera is a very violent instrument. And I believe also Marion chose not to show images of ancestral remains. So I think it's clear that photography or images have a very special place, or they should be treated with a lot of care, which we try to do as well. The second one is Early Gaze. It's an exhibition we will open in October. We leaned on external decolonial experts to choose images. Well, all the action points are there. And then lastly, there's a research we want to do. It's called Insight. It's something we will do in 2026, and we're looking for, or we're having a participatory research there. So we want to have communities involved in describing, but also looking at images and telling us what do they mean? What do they want from the images? What can we do as a museum? It's something many institutions have problems with or have questions about. So we're looking not at ourselves, not just at the decolonial experts, but really at communities into telling us how they want themselves to be represented in both in images, in imagery, and in words, because it's not enough to just erase words or replace them, but use the words that people use themselves to describe themselves. And that's basically it. You can read all the rest, but thank you for having me. And yeah, please talk to me if you feel up to it. Thanks.
Thank you all so much for those brilliant and short presentations. You can see how much work is put into this, how much research is going on. And for me, I just want to briefly kind of get around my final thoughts on this roundtable and this conference. For me, it was a great time to listen to different perspectives, to different voices and different views, and to try to understand from the many inputs and lectures I've heard during this conference. I think we agree on many things, and many things seem to be equally important to us. And I just wrote down some of the, for me, important points that I kind of picked up. A fruitful collaboration between African and European museums and institutions, equal and fair partnerships, mutual support, exchange of knowledge going both ways, a bridge you have to cross in both directions. How we address the colonial past with the questions of the history, of the provenance of the objects, the stories that are told, the possibilities of repatriation, of sharing, of addressing different stories to understand the history of those objects, and finally also to understand our histories in the global perspectives. I learned about the huge importance of human remains in the colonial context and beyond. That touches for me also questions of different religions, different beliefs, different cultural backgrounds that are important to be considered. And oftentimes you need some more also personal explanations and influences from colleagues to really understand the full perspectives. I also see the scientific side on the other side, or it's a spectrum maybe, like bioarchaeology or forensic anthropology, where we try to understand health, diseases, DNA analysis that can be very important. But we also have to consider those ethical questions, to have to bring back the remains of ancestors that are important for their families and communities. And we have to think about how would be the best ways to do that and to think about that together. So maybe also an African Museum of Anthropology would be great to show the involvement of the human species coming from Africa. So I think there are different possibilities, and we only can find solutions together. I mentioned I like the idea of the circulating artifacts, also showing how European modernist art, for example, was heavily influenced by African art, as you see in the works of Picasso and Braque and Giacometti. Maybe it would be interesting to bring those pieces also to Africa and, as I said, building bridges and go both ways. I think the questions we discussed are topics that are central to the museum community worldwide. We're discussing them also in the context of the renewal of the Code of Ethics, and we really have to find good wordings to address those aspects. I think the thing we had in common, and it was central in the first day, is the fight against illicit trafficking of cultural heritage. I think this is an issue that is worldwide. The plundering of museums, the plundering of archaeological sites from Mali to Sudan, but also in European countries, Southern America, in Asia, in Arab countries, everywhere in the world, you have this thing going on. And in the context of war and crisis, it's also a war on identity. Because, as I said, it's not about stones and ruins, but it's about the identity we are as human beings and about the history that is told. So selling those objects on the international art market deprives them from the context, deprives them from the scientific possibilities to learn more about the ancient history. And those illicit objects really have to try to repatriate them. And I would love, as I'm working, as I mentioned, with different law enforcement agencies, to come forward to get more contacts with museum professionals all over the world, to be like a small database maybe we can form to exchange on that and exchange expertise. And last but not least, the rural populations are very important for the protection of heritage sites, because if they identify with their own history, if they have a connection with those sites will most likely also get protected. Emergency management in museum, the safekeeping of our collection is central for us. And in the context of extreme weather phenomena, in the context of the climate crisis that is more and more approaching, this is also a topic equally important, I think, to European countries and to African countries. We face flooding, droughts, landslides, and so on. We also face museums in conflict zones, wars, civil wars. We are in times where terrorism and destruction happens all the time. And as heritage should be protected under the Hague Convention, often it's not enough, and we have to discuss also what ICOM do as an international organization. We're already doing a lot, but maybe we can still improve and give support and listen what are the needs in the different countries, especially in Africa, as for example the Sudan National Museum was attacked, and how can we help? And last but not least, the political independence of museum, I think, is a worldwide thematic that we have to address. We see it from museums from the US until European, and I think worldwide there can be tendencies that politics want to get involved into museums, tell museums what to show, what story to tell, what narrative would be the political opportune narrative, and we really have to secure our independence, secure our scientific approach, give the people, the visitors, the facts they deserve, and tell the different perspectives of histories to help them build their own opinion. And as the 17 UN SDGs and sustainability as a concept for a better world for everyone, we should strive for that. So to foster dialogue, to foster cooperations based on mutual respect, building bridges both ways. And I really meant to have this little speech for the roundtable. But as we're talking about to foster equal cooperations and partnerships, I would not just like to talk, I would just like to take action. So I would like to invite Eva Namutsoke to take my place in the final roundtable panel and to bring more perspective from the African women's side at the end of this conference, at least. Thank you.
Well, we are going to the end of this conference. It's our task, mine and Jean-Paul Cougoudou, chair of ICOM Africa, to sum up the main arguments treated in this conference. I'll list for the European side and then Jean-Paul will list for African side. Then we'll have some little speeches and some conclusions. Afterwards, we'll open a debate. But we have also, still now, 2 online lectures. I ask, would you please send here as well? Thank you. Yeah. Yes, if you come here. all the lecturers now. Elke, who is coming at your place? Okay, thank you. So, to sum up some arguments treated in the European practice and European conception of museums and heritage, I'll list simply. Monuments as moments of awareness, relationship between museums and society, museum collections / tangible heritage, possessive individualism, places of intangible cultural heritage, emotion participation. The museum is a symbol of predation and domineering violence. Authoritarian museum in curatorial practice and in educational practice. Reflection on the role of museum in the production of ethnographic knowledge. How can a European institution inherited from colonization be transformed and adapted to current socio-political realities? Jean-Paul, it's up to you to list your arguments.
Donc, merci à Giuliana pour la parole. Pour ce qui concerne la partie africaine, je crois qu'on a abordé un panel assez large de thématiques qui, je vais essayer de les résumer parce que c'est assez long, mais il faut dire qu'on a beaucoup évoqué la question du rôle des musées, notamment dans les régions en proie à des crises politiques, notamment à des guerres, et aussi la problématique de la protection du patrimoine dans ces temps difficiles. Un deuxième point a été notamment la question des restes humains, où il est ressorti des débats qu'il était impérieux de procéder à une restitution de ces biens-là pour ne serait-ce que préserver la paix entre les communautés. On a aussi abordé le musée et son rôle avec les communautés, les interactions entre cette institution en charge du patrimoine et les communautés. Communauté, je le rappelle aussi, dont le terme a quand même été un peu discuté. Par rapport à tous ces aspects, bon, on a essayé de rester un peu réservé dans la définition qu'on donne de ce concept-là. On a aussi évoqué le problème des publics dans les musées. Quelles sont les attentes légitimes des publics africains, notamment dans les musées, qui sont peu ou prou fréquentés par ces personnes pour lesquelles on dit généralement que les musées ont été créés. Donc, l'autre point, ça a été la contextualisation des objets. Dans le contexte européen et africain, on a vu qu'on n'avait pas la même appréhension de la sémantique qui entoure le discours muséal, notamment en ce qui concerne l'interprétation qu'on fait de l'objet. L'autre point, ça a été aussi la documentation comme processus de restitution. Il est ressorti qu'il était vraiment important de procéder à une documentation des objets qui allaient peut-être faire l'objet de restitution. Donc ça implique quand même la connaissance du parcours des collections, mais voir aussi comment on peut impliquer les communautés dans la connaissance de ces parcours-là. L'autre point qu'on a aussi évoqué, c'est notamment la perception que les communautés et les professionnels ont du problème de la gestion des objets dans les musées. Et on a montré qu'il était vraiment important qu'il y ait une forte décolonisation des musées, c'est vrai, mais une décolonisation aussi des rapports entre les professionnels au nord et au sud, mais entre les professionnels dans les différentes zones géographiques qu'on a désignées, ça veut dire des rapports entre eux-mêmes. Voilà, donc pour ce qui concerne la restitution, on l'a mise en relation avec l'histoire du continent, avec les appréhensions des populations. Et dernièrement, pour les derniers points, ça a été notamment tout ce qui concernait la promotion des modes endogènes et holistiques de conservation des biens culturels. Et on a vu que le patrimoine culturel immatériel occupe une grande place dans le processus de restitution, qui n'est pas seulement destiné aux objets matériels, mais tout ce qui touche au film, au son, notamment les archives audiovisuelles. Et on a montré que c'est un grand potentiel qui reste encore à exploiter. Donc je m'arrête là, et en attendant qu'on revienne pour la conclusion. Merci.
Now I'm giving the floor to Terry Niambe, former assistant curator of Ictology, the Livingstone Museum in Zambia, had other functions, Southern Africa Regional Representative of AFRICOM, and Vice President for Wildlife and Environmental Conservation Society of Zambia. Currently works for National Museums Board as a museum development officer for all national museums in Zambia. He has studied ecology, museology, and business administration. He is an ardent proponent of decolonization of museums in the world. He is now a member of the executive board of ICOM since July 2016. He has been a member of several committees before joining the executive board. Ethic Committee at ICOM from 2011 to 2016. He has been a member of ICOM Strategic Planning Committee from 2014 to 2019. He was also a board member of the International Committee on Documentation, CIDOC, from 2013 to 2016. He is ICOM board representative in the working group of decolonization. Currently, he serves as Vice President of ICOM. Terry, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Juliana, and good afternoon, colleagues. I know when it is this time, everyone is very tired, a little bit sleepy, but I can assure you with my powerful African voice, I will not allow you to sleep. Dear colleagues, it has been a pleasure being here in the last 2 days and discussing the issues of decolonization, repatriation, restitution, aspects that have been a challenge for most African museums, and I must say, not only African nations, but also the global South. And here I want to talk about Latin America. Asia experience the same challenge as we are experiencing. And I am standing here with two hearts, and as I always say, one is African, the other is ICOM. And speaking as an African, I know that this is a challenge that has been ongoing for years. Even in my own country, Zambia, where I come from, we have a piece that we would like to get from the British, which is in the British Museum of Natural History, which is the Broken Hill Skull, and we have been asking for this for 53 years, and up to today, we haven't made any much progress. And this is the story that is across the continent, but coming back to our organization, which is ICOM, you realize that all these cultural property objects or collections that are being asked for, human remains that are in the global north, are sitting in museums. And when they go back in the spaces where they are being asked for, other than going maybe to source communities or indigenous communities, by and large, most of them arrive and land in museums. And because of this particular aspect, it is therefore important that our organization, the International Council of Museums, takes a role in this particular dialogue. We have been playing catch up, and it is time to act, and time to act is now. When the board was preparing its strategic plan prior to 2022 when Alberto Gallardini, who's here, and I want, maybe others do not know him, is the former president of ICOM. The strategic plan committee did get from the membership a demand that ICOM needs to start dealing with aspects of decolonization, and this was embedded in the strategic plan of ICOM 2022 to 2028. In the year 2023, ICOM board did set up a decolonization committee working group to advise ICOM on how ICOM can decolonize itself as an institution, but also how ICOM as a global voice for museum and museum professionals can give advice to other museums and be that global voice that leads in this particular sphere of decolonization of our institutions. We have, in the last 2 days, spent quite some time talking about restitution and repatriation, but when we talk about just the topic of decolonization, we understand that there are many aspects, and decolonization means different things to different people in different areas in different parts of the world. For others, when we talk about decolonization, they will tell you, how are we telling the narratives of other people, the marginalized, the less represented in the institutions? And we all have this challenge, especially back on the continent in Africa. We have inherited institutions that we were not the brainchild of, but we need them. We need them to serve the communities that we serve. How do we rethink this museological pedagogy, as I would say, so that we can serve the communities that we are dealing with and make these particular institutions relevant? How do we become more inclusive rather than exclusive of the people that we serve? When we talk about decolonization, there is another aspect here that I probably have not heard in the 2 days, and you will excuse my redundancy if it was said, but there is one aspect that comes from UNIDRIP, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of the Indigenous People. Our colleague from Australia has left. But in this UNIDRIP, there is a guiding principle that says, two-eyed seeing. And this is what we must be thinking of as museums and as heritage professionals as we think of decolonizing our institution. Think all the time, not only from one side, from the Western side of things. Think, put yourself in the other person's shoes before you start acting. And this, in this way, we learn to start respecting and accepting other people's cultures and not come as we have been trained usually from the Western side as curators, as almighty curators, custodians of all knowledge and wisdom. And when we go out in communities, we want to dictate the story, how it must be taught. We must relearn if we want to decolonize. And when we go out there and meet communities, we must be those that are humble and learn from them, because they too are professors in their own cultures. And we have to learn, and we have to learn to co-curate, we have to learn to co-manage these particular institutions. So this was another level that I wanted to just add to our discussion. And we have to learn as institutions and as museums, as we collaborate between ourselves from the global north and us from the global south. We see that we still have many gray areas that we need to deal with already. When we engage in dialogue, are we truly dialoguing? Are we truly engaging ourselves? Once we start being truthful with each other and start engaging on a true basis, then we will deal with issues of restitution and repatriation in agreed manner. And I have always said, the issue of repatriation, restitution, there is no one solution that fits all. Each case is always a special case. But from each and every case, there is something that we can all learn from it. We need to communicate. We need to totally engage. The heritage that is kept in boxes in the global north, we have learned during this conference that we have made it dead, but actually it is living heritage. Those are not just specimens, they are not just objects, they mean a lot and they cannot stay in isolation. And having said that, the onus now goes to those of us that are curators, that are keeping heritage of other spaces, other communities that are far from where these collections came from, to own up, to be truthful, to open up, engage other communities. Do not fear that we will lose our collections, but open up, and when we start discussing, engaging, researching, doing provenance research, many things come out of that. It is not only repatriation and restitution, but we build knowledge that is beneficial for both sides of our world. So, my dear colleagues, dear friends, decolonization, I want to state, is complex, and we have experienced already this during our 2 days of the conference. Both the North, the global North, and the global South must continue to engage, to dialogue, to work together if we are going to have fruitful progress in this particular area. Here, representing the International Council of Museums, I would like to reiterate and say ICOM does commit to continue this dialogue, and we want to continue doing this for the betterment of our museums in the world, and we will continue to endeavor to create opportunities, platforms, and we are thankful to ICOM Europe and all the partners that have made this possible. And what would we like to see? As an African, I would like to see this dialogue continue next time, next year on the African continent. How about that one? Dear colleagues, I have stated that as ICOM, we will continue this particular dialogue. We have created a working group, and there is a desire by the ICOM membership that this working group does not end here, but continues on to become a standing committee to show commitment that ICOM is now ready to face the injustices, the role it played in colonization, and now that it is ready to decolonize. And I wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. Now is the time of Ayoko Mensah, curator and cultural expert. Since 2024, she has been working in the House of European History in Brussels on an exhibition on the European colonial and post-colonial history. Previously, she worked for several years as an artistic programmer at the Center for the Fine Art Beaux-Arts, where she was in charge of the Afropolitan program. Since 2014, she has been collaborating with the African Museum in Tervuren on exhibitions, artist talks, residencies, and several programs. In 2023, she co-curated the event Reappropriation Artists and Archives, which brought together 30 artists of African origin. Recently, she curated the exhibition Animism Universal, February-April 2025, at the Montresso Art Foundation in Morocco, which presented the works of Togolese artists. Since 2000, she also has worked as a consultant for several organizations, UNESCO, European Commission, EUNIC, and has been invited as a speaker at international conferences, Africa, Europe, US, China. Meisha has co-authored several books and wrote more than 100 articles on Africa and Afro-descendant of art scenes. She is speaking as online. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Juliana. Good afternoon. I hope, do you hear me? Okay. Thank you. Please, Bernd, probably I'm going to continue in French. Oui. Merci beaucoup pour cette invitation. Je suis vraiment très heureuse d'être là, même si c'est effectivement en ligne. Je peux imaginer que vous êtes très fatigués après 2 jours d'intenses discussions qui ont été passionnantes. Je n'ai pas pu être avec vous hier, mais j'ai suivi toutes les interventions, les contributions aujourd'hui qui étaient extrêmement riches. Je vais essayer d'être brève parce qu'effectivement, j'ai vraiment, je pense, conscience que là, vous devez être un peu aux limites, en fait, aussi de votre capacité d'écoute. Mais parmi les très nombreuses, évidemment, thèmes et questions qui ont été abordés, je voudrais retenir peut-être 2 points sur lesquels j'aimerais apporter mon éclairage. Le premier, c'est la question de la positionnalité, en fait, de chacun d'entre nous. À savoir, en fait, le fait de nous référer à notre identité sociale, de race, de genre et de classe, et de reconnaître que celle-ci structure notre perspective et notre connaissance, et donc que celles-ci ne sont jamais neutres, mais articulées articulées à d'autres subjectivités. Et durant les différentes interventions, j'ai entendu plusieurs collègues qui mentionnaient en fait cette question de la positionnalité et aussi de l'inconfort de leur positionnalité. Et j'ai trouvé ça très intéressant parce que je pense qu'il y a encore quelques années, les professionnels se référaient rarement en fait à cette question-là. Et dans une démarche en fait de décolonisation de nos pratiques muséales, de décolonisation des relations aussi entre l'Europe et l'Afrique. Et l'on sait à quel point ces relations sont chargées d'histoire et de stéréotypes et d'un passé lourd. J'en dirai quelques mots tout à l'heure, puisque effectivement, je travaille sur une exposition qui vraiment adresse cette question. Donc, dans cette démarche de décolonisation, finalement, la question de la positionnalité, je pense, de nos positionnalités est centrale, à la fois au plan individuel et au plan professionnel. Donc, voilà, je trouve que de la part des collègues européens, de reconnaître en fait leur position privilégiée par rapport à leurs collègues africains, mais aussi vraiment leur spécificité, à la fois, j'allais dire, voilà, s'ils sont européens, s'ils sont blancs, s'ils sont effectivement dans une classe dominante, s'ils sont hommes ou femmes, et d'avoir cette honnêteté de reconnaître effectivement peut-être les privilèges qui vont avec. Je trouve ça vraiment quelque chose que j'ai noté et qui, je trouve, est vraiment un signe que finalement, comme disait monsieur Nyambé juste avant moi, il faut une certaine, finalement, honnêteté aussi pour pouvoir, je pense, cheminer vers des pratiques, en fait, décoloniales et plus équitables. Euh, et, et du côté, en fait, de mes collègues africains, j'aurais eu une question pour savoir si euh, ce concept, cette notion de positionnalité leur semblait utile aussi à eux dans leur pratique, j'allais dire à la fois dans leurs relations intracontinentales, mais aussi dans leurs relations avec leurs collègues européens. Donc voilà, je ne vais pas m'étendre plus, mais je trouve que cette question-là est importante et que quand on commence en fait nos dialogues déjà en reconnaissant en fait d'où l'on parle et nos propres subjectivités, on est peut-être plus à même ensuite, euh, j'allais dire, de reconnaître nos limites, les limites de nos savoirs, les limites de nos compétences et donc de pouvoir s'ouvrir aussi en fait à d'autres pratiques et à d'autres visions du monde. Le deuxième point rapide, c'est le point qui concerne en fait le rôle des artistes dans les enjeux de transformation et de décolonisation des musées et des collections coloniales en Europe. C'est évidemment un sujet qui me concerne puisque avant tout, je suis moi une curatrice d'art, j'ai été journaliste pendant longtemps culturelle. Donc je suis vraiment avant tout en relation effectivement avec des artistes, même si je travaille aujourd'hui dans un musée d'histoire. Merci d'ailleurs, Juliana, pour cette longue présentation que vous avez faite voilà, de mon parcours. Mais ce rôle des artistes, je pense qu'il faut revenir dessus. On leur demande beaucoup dans ces questions de décolonisation aujourd'hui. Ils doivent à la fois permettre de créer de nouveaux narratifs, décoloniser le regard, rendre vie aux objets, attirer de nouveaux publics. Et donc, je renvoie aussi parfois un peu les institutions à leurs propres responsabilités. Ne demande-t-on pas trop aux artistes? Et est-ce pas notamment parfois en Europe de la part des musées ethnographiques, n'y a-t-il pas une certaine tendance à une certaine artwashing, hein? On invite des artistes à revisiter les collections voilà, coloniales ou à intervenir dans un musée. Et finalement, il n'y a pas grand-chose qui bouge structurellement. Donc, voilà, donc ça, c'est quelque chose de évidemment important. La question de l'accessibilité des archives et des collections a été mentionnée aussi aujourd'hui. Elle est essentielle. Si effectivement les artistes ont un rôle à jouer, mais ils ont encore souvent des difficultés à accéder aux archives et aux collections. Et pour finir, je voudrais juste dire un mot sur la question du soin et de la guérison. Parce que ce qui m'a frappé en travaillant avec des artistes sur les collections coloniales et les archives, c'est à quel point finalement ils sont capables, en réactivant ces archives, de montrer à quel point, notamment le fait qu'elles soient, encore la manière dont elles sont présentées en Europe, réactive aussi des traumas et réactive des blessures qui sont encore ouvertes en fait, qui ne sont pas lointaines. Les blessures de la colonisation, les blessures de la traite négrière, les blessures de nos mémoires, les blessures des histoires silenciées sont encore très présentes. Et, et donc, en réactivant aussi, finalement, ces blessures-là, il y a besoin d'espace de soins, il y a besoin d'espace de guérison. Et ces artistes ont aussi souvent cette fonction-là. Et je me souviens en fait d'une très belle cérémonie que l'on avait faite à l'Africa Museum avec l'artiste Grace Indiritu, qui est d'origine kenyane et britannique. Et c'était un des moments les plus forts parce elle a une performance qu'elle appelle Healing the Museum. Et nous l'avions faite en fait dans la salle de géologie de l'Africa Museum. Et dans cette salle qui symbolise vraiment l'extractivisme colonial, c'était très fort. Et nous étions tous à terre, même même le directeur. Et il s'est passé quelque chose, en fait, effectivement. Donc voilà, cette question du soin, de la guérison. Pour conclure, j'ai pas dit beaucoup sur l'exposition sur laquelle je travaille à la Maison de l'Histoire européenne. Mais je vous invite en fait à venir la voir. La Maison de l'Histoire européenne est un musée créé par le Parlement européen qui se trouve à Bruxelles, qui a ouvert en 2017. Et nous ouvrirons en avril 2026 une exposition intitulée Post-colonial qui adresse l'histoire, en fait, le passé colonial européen d'une manière transnationale, mais à partir des héritages aussi et de son impact sur les sociétés aujourd'hui et notamment la société européenne. Donc c'est un projet très ambitieux puisqu'il adresse cette question d'un point de vue européen. On est aussi au sein de l'institution dans une très profonde réflexion décoloniale sur comment effectivement une institution telle que la nôtre peut, j'allais dire, revoir son narratif et avoir un narratif plus inclusif et qui mette en lumière des histoires qui ont été silenciées. Donc c'est un moment très important et très, je trouve, nous sommes dans une période, en tout cas pour les musées, je trouve fort intéressante. Donc merci encore de m'avoir invité à suivre et à partager tous ces échanges.
Merci pour votre thank you for your introduction of an argument which was not so much treated in these 2 days, so the role of artists in decolonization. I think that we don't ask too much to the artist. It was asked much more in our histories, and so they are not allowed to have a major role now in this history, but we should involve the artist in this long process of decolonization. So thank you for your important addition to our conference. Now I think we can give the floor to Bakonirina. She holds a doctorate in languages, literature and societies from the Institut National de Langue et Civilisation Orientale in Alco, Paris. Specializing in archaeology, trained as a historian, she focuses on archaeology, museology and heritage. Her career in museums began at the University of Paris, one where she studied general museology and also had practical training at the Musée de l'Homme et le Musée de Quebenly in Paris, as well as training in heritage management and the Institut National du Patrimoine Paris. She is currently a research associate at the ICOM Institut de Civilisation Antananarivo, Madagascar. She's a member of ICOM and of the ICOM Regional Alliance of African Countries, of ICOMOS, International Council of Monuments and Sites, and full member of the Académie Malgache. She has led and organized a reorg workshop reorganizing sorry, reorganizing the Royal Collection at the Musée du Palais d'Antapia-Vatra, sorry, with UNESCO and ICOM in 2019, and in 2024, she led a workshop as a part of the ICOM 2023 Call for Solidarity Project Objects of Memory, an ICOM costume and ICOM Madagascar project for the promotion of historical textile heritage supported by ICOM Sorek. Norina, the floor is yours.
Merci. Est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Oui.
Vous m'entendez?
Oui.
Merci beaucoup. Madame la présidente ICOM, Monsieur le président de l'Alliance régionale, c'est avec un grand plaisir que je prends la parole dans le cadre de cette rencontre internationale. Je vous remercie d'abord de m'avoir donné la parole et puis je remercie les organisateurs de m'avoir donné cette opportunité de participer à cette rencontre. J'ai demandé d'intervenir autour du panel 3 qui s'intitule Musée, collection, rôle des communautés. En fait, depuis hier, pendant les différentes communications et jusqu'à aujourd'hui, nous avons déjà longuement parlé des communautés et je vais retenir quelques réflexions. D'abord, concernant la décolonisation, ou plutôt, je vais mettre en relation décolonisation et communauté. Je ne vais pas prétendre parler un peu plus que notre vice-président de l'ICOM tout à l'heure, qui a largement parlé de décolonisation. Mais je pense qu'il faut bien qu'on se mette d'accord sur ce concept. Je reprends ce qui a été dit tout à l'heure, lors de l'intervention de notre collègue du Sénégal. Il a dit musée, outil colonial avec un point d'interrogation. Effectivement, ce n'est pas le seul cas du Sénégal, parce que Madagascar a connu ces mêmes phénomènes au lendemain de la colonisation. Nos palais royaux ont été investis en musée, avec des techniques muséographiques, copiées des techniques européennes. Nos bâtiments coloniaux ont été aussi transformés en musées. Mais n'oubliez pas que ces bâtiments coloniaux font partie intégrante de notre patrimoine architectural. Et ce patrimoine architectural, il faudra bien qu'on le conserve parce qu'il fait, il fait partie intégrante de notre identité aussi, hein, de notre identité architecturale. Alors, pour moi, la décolonisation, d'abord, à partir de ces bâtiments coloniaux ou ces musées ou bien ces bâtiments royaux, c'est le discours muséographique qui contribue à la décolonisation du musée. C'est le discours et ainsi que son contenu. Et je suis tout à fait d'accord avec mon collègue de tout à l'heure que on peut aménager des musées dans des constructions traditionnelles, hein, qui montrent vraiment notre savoir-faire et qui seront plus près des communautés, oui, mais la décolonisation n'est pas seulement avoir un bâtiment de construction traditionnelle. La décolonisation, c'est surtout donc le discours et le contenu. Voilà. Ça, c'est la première chose que je voulais mettre en point et puis en discussion. Je voudrais aussi parler de la communication de notre collègue Mustapha Hussein qui n'a pas pu être présenté. Mon analyse à moi, c'est que sa contribution met en exergue une vision innovante et engagée du rôle d'un musée dans un contexte post-colonial. Euh, il, euh, il porte une approche communautaire par le développement d'un récit identitaire local construit collectivement et ancré dans des traditions autochtones. Pour moi, c'est très, très important. Et pour lui, c'est une mythologie non imposée, comme il l'a dit, non imposée de l'extérieur, mais surtout enracinée au cœur de la communauté. Et alors là, le musée devient un espace de reconstruction identitaire, un espace de mémoire collective et un espace de solidarité nationale. Je vais vous donner un exemple. Euh, des fouilles archéologiques ont été opérées au début de la colonisation par des administrateurs coloniaux euh, à Madagascar. Ils sont fouillés dans des régions du nord-est de Madagascar, dans la région de Vohemar. Je ne sais pas si vous connaissez Madagascar, mais nous sommes la 4e grande île du monde et nous sommes dans l'océan Indien. Et ces administrateurs coloniaux ont fouillé 600 sépultures. Les produits de fouilles archéologiques ont été divisés en 3 lots. Une partie de ces lots est partie au musée de l'Homme, devenu musée de Quai Branly, une partie au Muséum d'histoire naturelle et archéologique de Nîmes et une partie à l'université d'Antananarivo où moi je travaille. Les artefacts montrent une grande civilisation très riche, héritée du commerce ancien dans le bassin du sud-ouest de l'océan Indien depuis le Xe siècle jusqu'au XVe siècle. Connaissant cette histoire, les communautés sur place, avec l'aide des scientifiques, souhaiteraient ouvrir un musée communautaire dans le but de recréer un espace de reconstruction identitaire. Alors, pour cela, ce que nous pensons faire, c'est que les communautés seront impliquées dans la conception de ce musée, dans la conception des expositions, la gestion des collections. Mais là, on demandera que nous formions les communautés. Parce que n'oubliez pas, la préservation du patrimoine et la conservation du patrimoine est typiquement technique et scientifique. Donc, il faudra de la formation. Donc, en plus de ça, il faudra aussi respecter les protocoles culturels auprès de communautés locales. Donc, il est important de se référer aux communautés locales. Un musée qui implique la communauté aussi est un musée qui, à travers les performances, par exemple, on a parlé tout à l'heure de l'artisanat. Hein? Alors, pour nous, c'est décoloniser les musées et rendre les communautés, ou plutôt impliquer les communautés, c'est à travers ces performances. Par exemple, la performance au niveau de l'artisanat traditionnel, le tissage, le tressage, le travail de la sculpture, ce qui est plus du patrimoine immatériel, un savoir-faire qui doit être transmis. Est-ce que ce n'est pas le rôle du musée de transmettre tout ça? Et je reprends les propos de notre collègue Sénégal. Il a dit l'implication de communautés encourage l'apprentissage et le partage. Et ce n'est pas strictement une simple conservation passive, il a dit. Hein, des objets, ce n'est pas une conservation passive des objets, mais une expérience culturelle et partagée. Impliquer les communautés dans les programmes de recherche, pour moi aussi, c'est la décolonisation. Parce que il faut que les communautés soient initiées donc, aux démarches et connaissent les objectifs de nos recherches. Alors là, la communauté peut jouer un rôle dans, par exemple, le choix des artefacts et particulièrement dans les recherches archéologiques, puisque je suis archéologique et je fais de l'archéologie funéraire. Nous impliquons la communauté dans les rituels. Nous impliquons les communautés dans les explications, par exemple, de la position du corps. Nous impliquons les communautés dans la présence des objets et comment les décrire, hein, et comment est-ce qu'on peut les prélever. Donc, la restitution, donc, par exemple, auprès de communautés, est une démarche obligatoire après les campagnes de recherche. Et c'est déjà un moyen pour nous de s'approprier de l'histoire. Là, tout à l'heure, on a parlé d'enquête, on a parlé d'enregistrement, on a parlé de filmer les communautés. Et il faut savoir, on a parlé tout à l'heure de consensus, de pouvoir les exploiter. Alors, je pense qu'il faut respecter la communauté dans le cas de refus, de se faire photographier, de se faire filmer. Mais en cas d'acceptation, la restitution doit être faite et obligatoire. Il y a aussi quelque chose à reprendre dans l'observation du musée de Portugal qui disait tout à l'heure, si j'ai bien compris, hein, l'utilisation persistante de la langue et des concepts européens pour décrire les collections sape la valeur des collections. Et c'est ça le rôle des communautés. La communauté a les mots justes et connaît les valeurs des objets. Je profite de cette occasion pour vous rappeler que les spécialistes des musées en Afrique, en 1996, a édité euh, un, un- un livre, ou plutôt oui, a édité avec l'égide de l'ICOM dans le programme Africom à l'issue des rencontres Quel musée pour l'Afrique en 1991, un ouvrage intitulé Manuel des normes et pour la documentation des collections africaines. Il a été publié après 4 ans de recherche où les communautés locales ont été impliquées dans le choix des vocabulaires pour la description des objets. Donc, je me demande où est-ce que nous en sommes avec cette norme de la documentation des collections. Et j'en reviens rapidement à la question de restitution de biens culturels. Cette restitution est bien entendu une démarche vers la décolonisation des musées et une implication avec les communautés. Le projet communautaire dont j'ai parlé tout à l'heure parle de collections sensibles des objets funéraires. Le vice-président de l'ICOM en a parlé tout à l'heure. Il y a nos ancêtres qui sont dans les cartons. Et je voudrais parler donc de notre expérience. Vous n'êtes pas sans savoir que au mois Madagascar a pu faire revenir en sa terre natale 3.
There are some technical program. We can't see you and hear you.
La recherche a été effectuée.
Okay. Now, yes. Okay, now.
C'est bon? Est-ce que c'est rétabli?
C'est bon.
Oui. Oui, ça va, oui. En fait, je vous dis une chose, c'est que nous sommes en pleine manifestation populaire et il y a des grandes émeutes dans la ville, actuellement à Madagascar, partout, et en protestation à des manques d'eau et d'électricité. Et c'est pourquoi l'Internet je suis en très mauvaise connexion. Donc, je vais aller très vite pour éviter ceci. C'est que, en ce qui concerne l'expérience de rapatriement de, de restes humains, Madagascar a ouvert le chemin de ce rapatriement. Parce qu'en août dernier, nous avons pu rapatrier 3 crânes, dont un appartenant à un présumé roi Sakalav du nord-est. La demande, mais comme vous le savez, la restitution doit passer par l'État et que la restitution se fait d'État en État. Donc, l'État avec la communauté donc, ont pu arriver.
May I ask you to close your intervention, please?
Dans les...
May you close your intervention, please?
Oui, oui, je vais conclure le rôle de le musée, donc à travers le code de déontologie, que les communautés, en fait, que les collections doivent, doivent servir aux communautés d'origine. Et là, je vais ce terme qui m'a beaucoup interpellé tout à l'heure ou hier, c'était l'esprit possessif des musées. Moi, pour la décolonisation, il faut enlever cet esprit de possessif des musées et plutôt donc encourager la mobilité des collections et transfert des collections. C'est là où la communauté donc peut vraiment s'approprier donc de ces collections. Dommage, j'aurais pu encore dire beaucoup de choses, mais le temps ne m'est pas imparti. Je vous remercie.
Merci. Merci bien pour thank you for recalling us some arguments treated in these 2 days. Now we'll finish our table with the short intervene by Marianne Bertin. You know Marianne, she spoke this morning. She is vice chair of ICOM, and his role, I suppose, will be at the basis of his interview. Thank you.
Thank you all for still being part of the room after these 2 days. My conclusion will be very brief, and it is more an invitation to still think together rather than real conclusion. I take the floor as the co-vice chair of ICOM, but also as a European-born white woman. This is the perspective I want to share for tonight. Amongst the things that interested me during these 2 days were some things that we all together discussed. we acknowledged that museums and heritage are not neutral, that they're still intertwined with colonial heritage and history. And as Terry highlighted, decolonization is an issue that we all share within the room, but it does have different definitions and meanings depending on each countries, each persons, each museums, and so has to be addressed differently depending on every situation. I have a few questions to raise now after these 2 days. And the first one is, how can we go deeper now after 2 days of discussing together during this conference and really create some sustainable dialogues and partnerships inside, but also outside museums, communities, to reflect all these discussions. For this sustainable dialogues and partnerships, I think it is important also to engage with communities that were not represented today, but also more young professionals that needs also to be part of the discussions. We finally were people from inside the museum, but it would be interesting also for me to really decolonize our collections, to invite other voices to speak on collections, and not only so-called museum expertise to give advice on these collections. A thing that we can see is also that there is still some authorities and power that are embedded in our museums on who has access or not to collections, to museums, but also to visas, to grants, to funds. And this is something that still needs to be challenged and to be within our community, but also outside this conference room. Another question after these 2 days is also how to get to go for long-term reflections and really share practices, engage with, try to make provenance research a justice and political tool, as Didier Wenoude invited us yesterday, up to get more repatriation. And also, as my colleagues presented just before me, not to reproduce norms and rules that are within European museums and not just reproduce them in African countries and African museums. For the display, the care, the preservation and collection, but also the description and the vocabulary for museums. Another thing that was pointed out was also the political agendas and pressures on decolonial issues and how it can be instrumentalized by some governments to go with political agendas, or that it can be also when it's not an issue anymore, the question of fund pressures and how to go to secure funds to go deeper with this question. As a conclusion, I hope that next time we will meet. We will meet again during a conference and a meeting. This time led by ICOM Africa and Jean-Paul Koudougou in one of the countries involved in the regional islands, to really experience community museums and heritage, to experience intangible heritage also and living collections, to invite other voices to take part to these discussions, not only in French, English, and Italian, but also in other African languages, to challenge vocabularies, to talk about the collections and the museums, and also to challenge the way we organize a conference and how we share knowledge, not only in a conference room, but also on the field, to really go beyond our perspective together. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup à Marion, merci à Thierry Niambé, merci aux grandes dames qui ont intervenu en ligne. Et pour nous réveiller un peu, je vais vous demander de faire encore un banc pour eux. D'accord, donc nous nous acheminons doucement vers la fin de cette belle rencontre. Voilà. Et on se félicite aussi de toutes les thématiques qui ont été abordées, les réflexions qui ont été développées. C'est vrai que tout à l'heure, Marion a essayé de revenir encore sur certains grands aspects, voilà, des discussions qu'on a eues. Mais bon, je pense qu'il nous reste un peu de temps. On va essayer encore de voir s'il y a des aspects qu'on voudrait évoquer. Donc à cet effet, et vu la fatigue aussi, je vais être un peu dans la dictature. On va prendre 5 questions maximum. Donc, il faudra lever vos doigts et puis ceux qui veulent prendre la parole, 5 questions maximum et permettre aux intervenants de réagir avant qu'on y passe à cette séance conclusive-là. Donc, je vous invite à vous prononcer. Quels sont ceux qui veulent intervenir? Okay. Donc, il y a Caroline. Le micro baladeur est là.
Thank you very much for the coordination of this conference and the fact that we're here to discuss. The only thing I ask is, while I've seen Marian has spoken about what we need to do going forward, there hasn't been an actual action plan. Will there be a set time for the committees, both ICOM Europe and ICOM Africa, to actually develop an action plan for tackling different issues and how we are going to actually decolonize our museums?
Thank you. I will just reiterate the question I asked earlier, which is what concrete steps will you be taking as organizers to ensure diversity in whatever iteration of the conference happens next? Thank you.
Monsieur Chevalier.
C'est une question, ça peut-être pas à vous sur la plateforme, mais à Napenok. En fait, pourquoi proposer un comité permanent sur la décolonisation plutôt qu'un comité international qui est beaucoup plus étendu, inclusif et qui peut regrouper beaucoup plus de pays que les éventuels 5 ou 6 membres ou 8 membres d'un comité permanent? Est-ce qu'il y a des raisons pour cela? Pour autant qu'il y ait une réponse. Merci.
Ok, merci Monsieur Chevalier. Il nous reste 2 personnes à prendre.
Oui, moi j'ai une question en termes de perspective, parce que là on est dans une nouvelle période avec l'arrivée des nouvelles technologies, avec l'intelligence artificielle. Quelles sont les perspectives de la décolonisation des musées et surtout de la restitution? Parce qu'actuellement on assiste à une théâtralisation, à une Disneylandisation des musées où l'objet n'est plus l'élément essentiel du dispositif scénographique. Il y a les nouvelles technologies, même l'humain est placé au cœur du dispositif scénographique. À la longue, est-ce que ça ne va pas tuer l'âme et l'esprit des musées? Et ça aussi, est-ce que les objets même ne vont pas perdre leur valeur? Ça, c'est une question. Merci.
C'est la dernière personne.
Oui.
Alors, moi, la question, c'est en termes de réalisation concrète d'après cette rencontre. Nous l'avons déjà souligné dès le départ qu'on va de conférence en conférence. On part de restitution en restitution. Donc, je voudrais quand même qu'à l'issue de cette rencontre, qui est d'ailleurs une rencontre très symbolique, ICOM Afrique, ICOM Europe, que nous puissions avoir des mots forts adressés à des acteurs bien connus qui sont généralement des acteurs politiques, mais aussi les responsables des musées en Europe. Vous savez, très souvent, il y a des musées qui nous mettent en difficulté. Surtout lorsqu'il s'agit de la question de la restitution, il y a les grands musées qui sont connus en Europe, qui se réunissent et qui font des déclarations. Voici notre position par rapport à ça. Ça nous met en difficulté. Je pense qu'il est temps que nous puissions, à l'issue de cette rencontre, avoir des mots clairs et forts adressés à des acteurs par rapport à notre position sur tel ou tel autre élément qui vient d'être dit ici, au lieu de tourner autour du pot. Merci.
Merci Placide pour cette intervention. Je vais te demander de remettre le micro directement à Anna pour qu'elle puisse réagir sur la question du comité sur la décolonisation.
Jean-Paul, moi aussi.
Yes, thank you, Alexander, for your question. I was thinking my question to all of you, what would be your expectations from the working group on decolonization now and maybe in the future a standing committee? Just to let me stand up, to tell you where we are standing now. We've existed for 2 years, and we have delivered our final report to the executive board, of which we hope they will adopt it. The report is pretty dense and very rich, and there are several recommendations which we also put in a resolution, because we would like to have a few things really decided in the General Assembly. We prefer a standing committee because a working group is a bit loose, can't exist forever. An international committee would again be full of Europeans, because ICOM is mostly composed of European members. So that is what we thought, that is not a good step maybe. An international committee is a bottom-up movement, and a standing committee would be with people who apply now in ICOM, who will be appointed with a view on a worldwide spreading of members. My proposal would be a standing committee is like a permanent committee. It doesn't necessarily have to exist forever. At a certain point it should be evaluated. Is this still necessary? Can such a standing committee still be effective and useful? But that is still, in Dubai we will hear more about the final steps here in this. We made an action plan in our report for the coming years, and we are very much open to additions and questions and suggestions. Our Australian colleague is not here now, but Terry also mentioned that we focused also pretty much on UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. We organized 2 meetings online. We invited altogether some 180 people of indigenous origin. And we noticed that it was very, I mean, not all of them, we had twice 20 people more or less, but we noticed that it was very worthy for them to speak among themselves and to hear from each other more or less the same problems, depending where, indifferently from where they were staying. So one of our suggestions would be, and we wrote that in our report, that maybe an international committee for indigenous peoples could be created. But again, that is, we cannot say that must be there. That it would be a bottom-up movement, and people should, I think you need 50, I don't know exactly the rules now, 50 signatures of people supporting that idea. So there are many possibilities within ICOM, I think. And again, we are very much open. Our report is still with the board now, but I hope we can soon just spread it out. Intermediate form, because it should be translated, of course, in the two other ICOM languages. It's in English now, but at least that we can already share it. I think that's important. And again, if you have any questions or suggestions, I'm here. I'm here tomorrow as well. Thank you.
If I may, it's possible that standing committee has a working group inside, because the arguments are so many that I think that many people should work on the standing committee to clarify all the matters we put on the floor.
It's already our working method in the working group. We are 12 members, and then there are some members from the executive board as well. And we have tackled so many issues in these 2 years, like we sent out surveys, we worked with the Legal Affairs Committee, we work with ICOM, we work with CDOC, and we will work with the committee on the working group on statutes. So we said, well, who's interested in this and that and that? So we have sub-teams who are focusing on that. It's not the working group doing it all together all the time. And the same with the report. We had a subgroup on the glossary. We have proposed a glossary. So that is a very good way of working indeed. I don't think we need extra people like in ICOM CC, but
okay.
Within such a group, which shouldn't be too small, we could find different people interested in different topics, because there's more than enough to be done.
Yes, if I can add now, I think that for our part, for going further, we have the intention of publish the proceedings of this conference. And I think that this could be a good point for presenting the numerous issues that we debated here. And so ICOM Italy and ICOM Europe will publish the proceedings. I want to that it would happen very quickly, and so I'll ask immediately after the end of conference the text for publishing. It will be a book online, not published, because we had some experiences of books leaving in the storages, and we don't want to fool the storages of books, not spread off. And so it will be online, but we'll publish the proceedings.
Ok, merci Anna, merci à Juliana pour cette intervention. Je vais aller directement donner la parole à Thierry pour qu'il intervienne et réagisse sur les points qui ont été évoqués, notamment tout ce qui concerne le pragmatisme qu'on voudrait quand même observer à la sortie de cette conférence. Donc Thierry, can have the floor.
Thank you very much, Jean-Paul, and thank you very much, dear colleagues, for the interventions and the questions that have been raised. First of all, just to talk about what Alex talked about, the decolonization working group. I think Hannah did quite answer that in a bit, but we have not yet concluded on this one, like you have rightly said, and to avoid making a group going forward that is balanced on one side, the ideal thought and proposal was for us to make this a standing committee so that we can balance from different regions is the current proposal, and then it will be brought to everyone in the coming few weeks in Dubai and see how we go forward. And I personally totally agree that this would be the best so that we can balance powers from different regions. There is a question, and I think Juliana and Jean-Paul could have answered that one, coming from Eva regarding the concrete steps that we make to ensure there is diversity. Eva, there is never a time you do such organization where everything is 100% every time. There is something to learn at every moment, but you have said a very powerful point, and which is well noted for all of us, for ICOM. Now I'm speaking for ICOM, that we do take note of your submission that is here, and I'm sure we all agree here as ICOM Europe, ICOM Africa, that going forward we need to critically look at this particular aspect and ensure that there is balance when we organize this particular aspect, and all voices must be given equal platform to be to serve, to say, to share their ideas and their knowledge. And I think this is well noted, and I'm sure when I speak as ICOM, I also represent ICOM Europe and ICOM Africa in this particular aspect. So be assured that this is well noted, and if it happens again under ICOM, I put my head on the chopping board for you. So, but just if you allow me, Jean-Paul, there was another question from our colleague from Senegal regarding objects. If I heard him correct, if objects are now being taken over by AI, and I can assure you objects will always remain part of us. This is living heritage. There is nothing that will be created artificially that will replace what we have. And after all these technologies that we are talking about, and actually in museums we're talking about embracing these technologies. How do we embrace them as museum professionals to enhance our services to the communities, different communities? And when I say communities in Africa, may mean different thing to communities in Europe, and even different museums have different communities that they serve. But how do we embrace these technologies to serve the communities that we serve is the question that we always have to deal with. The older generation are fine, love to see these particular objects in the museums and the dialogue with them as they visit. But for the young generation today, the Gen Z, would like to see, they get pleasure when there is more added to it using technologies. And so these are aspects that we have to think through as institutions, as we serve the communities that we serve. How do we embrace these aspects to give the experience that is required to the visitors that come, without relegating the importance of the collections that we have in our institutions? Nothing, absolutely nothing will take away our collections. Thank you.
Ok, merci à Thierry. Je vais laisser la parole à Marion, voilà, pour qu'elle puisse dire deux mots, réagir sur ce qui a été dit. Avant que nos camarades qui sont en ligne, si elles veulent prendre la parole, je vais leur donner à chacune 2 minutes avant qu'on y passe à la conclusion. Marion.
Thank you, Jean-Paul, for giving me the floor again. I would like to answer to a few points that were highlighted for the questions. I am happy to know that the proceedings will be published, but I think it will be also important, as Caroline has pointed out, to have a real plan for actions as well. We know that proceedings are academic publications that will just be read between our community and our own. It would be great also to have a real plan for action, so that, as Placid pointed out, our words are not only listened and heard between our small community, but that we go deeper. And thank you, Eva, for your question again. And for me, the question of diversity within every panel should be also part of this plan for actions for further conferences and further actions within be it within ICOM or within the broader museum community. And regarding the question of new technologies, it could be, it is a topic in itself that could be a theme for a next conference. I won't go to a long answer, but that's for sure something that we could discuss for hours to know how we can use and share the different perspectives on these technologies from different generations, different voices, different perspectives. Thank you.
Merci encore une fois à Marion. Je ne sais pas pour nos collègues qui sont en ligne, est-ce qu'on a quand même des mains en... Quelqu'un veut intervenir ou pas? Parce qu'on ne les voit pas ici. OK. Bon, d'accord. Donc, je pense qu'on s'achemine tout doucement, comme je l'ai dit, vers la fin. Mais vous aurez remarqué que ce qui est ressorti principalement dans les différentes préoccupations, c'est vraiment le désir d'un pragmatisme, qu'on aille au-delà maintenant des bonnes intentions, voilà, des vœux qu'on émet chaque fois à ce type de réunion, pour voir concrètement à la prochaine rencontre, qu'est-ce qu'on pourrait présenter comme bilan concrètement réalisé sur le terrain, quelles sont les actions qu'on pourrait réaliser sur le terrain. Et je crois qu'à ce niveau, ICOM Afrique et ICOM Europe, dans cette collaboration-là, c'est une voie qu'on est en train d'ouvrir, de tracer, pour montrer qu'en réalité, les professionnels des deux alliances et en même temps des comités nationaux aussi doivent pouvoir commencer à travailler ensemble. Des pistes ont été dégagées et je crois que très rapidement, pour ce qui concerne les restes humains, on a été tous unanimes que bon, c'est un sujet qui est assez délicat, mais ça nécessite quand même qu'il y ait une action concrète de ces deux alliances-là et des comités nationaux de ces deux alliances-là. Voilà. Donc, doit-on aller vers un manifeste, une déclaration, l'un mis dans l'autre? Je crois qu'avec ICOM Europe, on va voir véritablement sous quelle forme ça doit se présenter pour qu'on puisse parler d'une seule et même voix concernant ces aspects-là. Il y a un autre point qui a été évoqué, c'est le rôle des comités nationaux dans l'identification, mais aussi de la mise en œuvre d'actions concrètes sur le terrain pour demander des restitutions. Comment les comités nationaux peuvent inciter derrière les musées dans les différents pays pour qu'on puisse avoir une visibilité et aussi poser des actions concrètes sur le terrain en termes de demande de restitution ou pas. Donc je crois que pour ce qui concerne ICOM Afrique, on aura une assemblée générale très bientôt à Dubaï. Ça va être un programme d'activité assez intéressant où on va inciter les différents comités nationaux à s'impliquer dans ce type d'activité. Et l'autre chose aussi, c'est l'élargissement du spectre du concept de décolonisation. Effectivement, je pense qu'en réalité, tout le monde en parle, mais concrètement, qu'est-ce qui se passe sur le terrain? C'est la question qui a été posée. Il faudrait aussi qu'à ce niveau-là, avec les collègues, on puisse sentir que, bon, chacun s'est impliqué, et au-delà du concept, qu'est-ce qui a été concrètement fait? Et ça, je crois qu'on peut aller petitement par des petites actions et arriver véritablement à présenter quelque chose qui aurait été fait. Et je pense qu'à ce niveau-là, il y a beaucoup de propositions, que chacun puisse être invité à réaliser quelque chose qui va pouvoir être porté à la connaissance aussi. L'autre point que je vais aborder, c'est vraiment trouver une façon de nous rencontrer. Je crois qu'il serait bien quand même qu'on envisage la prochaine rencontre sur le continent africain. Parce que c'est vrai qu'on aurait aimé qu'il y ait beaucoup d'Africains qui soient venus des différents musées. Là, on a évoqué chaque fois le manque de moyens, c'est vrai, mais je pense que si on s'y prend tôt, on implique un peu aussi les gouvernements, on peut arriver un temps soit peu à trouver des solutions. Et M. Alain Godoni, qui est le chargé de mission du président Patrice Talon au Bénin, nous disait tout à l'heure que bon, il faudra envisager, avec des lettres déjà, pour impliquer aussi ces politiques-là parce qu'en réalité, si on arrive avec un argumentaire assez convaincant, avec des objectifs clairs qu'on veut atteindre, voilà, on pense qu'on peut arriver à convaincre aussi les gouvernants et les impliquer. Parce qu'il ne faudrait pas qu'ils pensent généralement que c'est des grandes messes où il y a des professionnels qui se retrouvent pour parler des choses académiques, comme si vraiment tout était un peu virtuel, et sur le terrain, on ne voit pas vraiment quelque chose qui est fait. Donc je pense que si on va au niveau de ces axes-là, on peut arriver quand même à montrer notre crédibilité, notre engagement aussi, à faire bouger un peu les lignes au niveau de nos comités nationaux et aussi des relations entre les professionnels européens et africains. Donc voilà un peu, c'est un point que je voulais aborder. Et il nous reste 5 minutes. Je vais donner la parole à Juliana pour qu'on puisse passer à la séance conclusive et se donner rendez-vous très bientôt dans un autre pays pour parler quand même des résultats qu'on aura atteints, pour sortir ces grandes réflexions qu'on aura menées ces 2 jours durant. Voilà.
Merci, merci Jean-Paul. Really, I think that we can't do a real conclusion because we shared argument, we shared topics, we spoke about what to do. So I would like from ICOM Europe to tell what European museum should have learned from these two days conference. I think that the European Museum should examine deeply the African Museum's practices in the relationship with the communities, to secure better the concept of inclusion in our museums. We are far from have the exact idea what inclusion means in our museums. And to include better immaterial heritage in our museums and our practice. Usually we do very little about it. Another thing that I think we should learn is the curator's humility. I appreciated very much this term as the starting point for a just, ethic, and inclusive practice in the work on collections. We should learn to redefine and make relational ethics between professionals from the North and South and make it as a reality. To broaden the spectrum of museum decolonization to include the decolonization of relations between professionals from the North and South and between professionals from the North and South themselves. To make African museums in the era of restitution models of inclusivity, social justice, shared practices, connection to the social context and ethical practices. Urge ICOM member professionals to take the lead in the managing the issue of restitution. Urge ICOM national committees to become more involved in revitalizing relations between museums in the North and South by facilitating exchanges related to the identification and implementation of restitution processes. I think that that could be a good point to add some steps, further steps in the relationship between North and South, and to learn much more from each other and to increase our knowledge, our justice, our best practices in working in the museums. Thank you, of you. Well, I think that someone of the organization can tell something about tomorrow morning, but I don't see anyone here. You have in your program the step of the line B of the metro to reach the Museum of the Civilization. And I think that the matter is to take in the terminus station the line B to get the air and stop in the station which is noticed there, and you can arrive. But I think if you write me, and you have some problems, I can give you help. I hope so. Well, ecco qua.
Allez, au revoir à tous, bon retour dans vos foyers et à très bientôt. Voilà, merci.
Ho dato qualche indicazione per domani mattina sulla metropolitana B, se vuoi ripeterle va bene. Sì, certo.
Mario, are we seeing you tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay.
I will give.
Ilaria will repeat the instructions for tomorrow morning.
Hi everyone, tomorrow we will meet in MUCIF, Museo delle Civiltà. You can take the metro line B and stops at Eur Fermi. The stop is Fermi. You have all the information in your program, in this side of the program.
From the stop Fermi, you reach the main road of Euro, and the Mucim is in front of you, so it's very, very near to the stop.
And the visit will start at 10. 10. Thank you.